Ladies and gentlemen, I'm a podcast man. I'm also a family man. This is my son, Alfredo.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Cinema Forecast. I am indeed Connor's son, Alfredo, and this to my left right now is...
Connor?
And today we got a guest on the show. Real quick, though, this is Cinema Forecast, the movie podcast where every month we are randomly assigned a category with 4 movies attached that we feel fit said category, and each week we examine one of those films in the context of the category. Last week we did There Will Be Blood, and this week we are doing There Will Be Blood.
You fucked us! You fucked us! Yeah, we just did No Country for Old Men on Sunday, little inside baseball. This is the soonest we've ever recorded an episode back-to-back with another episode, because it is now Tuesday night. 2 days. And that was kind of interesting for this episode because...
And to clarify, this episode is There Will Be Blood, as you
Yes.
saw in the name.
Yes, we're talking about There Will Be Blood. But the reason I mentioned that like short window is that when we watched No Country for Old Men, I finished that movie with kind of like a heavy feeling, and I feel like that heavy feeling has lasted all the way to watching There Will Be Blood. And so yesterday I was going to watch There Will Be Blood, and I'm like, oh man, am I ready for another extremely heavy movie? But the answer was yes, I am happy to say, because this movie rocks.
The world's in a dark fucking place, dude. I get it, man. I get it. You know, turning on the news, it just fucking sucks. Speaking of things that don't suck, though, joining us today, our good buddy, Connor's former roommate, my fellow Redmond High School Mustang. We got my guy, Keith, in the building.
Hello, all. How are we all doing today?
Oh, we're doing good.
Fantastic.
I mean, the world's on fire, dude.
Yeah. I mean, I feel the dark movie themes. Like I've been, watching through things for the first time, things that I should have watched a long time ago, like Schindler's List.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of dark
That's
themes
right.
have been.
Some light reading.
Yeah.
He's been watching it in parts, which seems like the way to kind of go
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
Just coping one night at a time.
Yeah,
basically.
you told me the other day, you're like, yeah, I've just felt like beating myself up, so I watched Grave of the Fireflies, and then I
Yeah.
watched Schindler's List.
Why
I'm like,
didn't he get a
Jesus, bro.
fucking job? Not Schindler. Schindler
not-
should have avoided getting a job.
It's not going.
Fucking no, the kid in Grave of the Fireflies. That's I have to admit that's just my thing that I've been saying since Connor and I watched that movie together a long time ago. Speaking of watching movies together, Connor's the guy who showed me this movie too.
Oh,
showed
really?
me Tremors.
I didn't know
First
that.
time I watched this was in your bedroom. I think before you switched bedrooms, we watched Tremors in your second bedroom at the PM, and we watched this one in your first bedroom, the slightly smaller one.
Yeah, now it's coming back to me. So that actually really helps me figure out when I did watch this movie for the first time, because it was a little blurry in my memory, and I was pretty sure I didn't watch it very soon after it came out, but I was like, did I watch it in my college years? And yeah, you just confirmed it, because I'm pretty sure, for whatever reason, I think it was because I was really into Radiohead, and I heard that Johnny Greenwood did the soundtrack to this, and I was like, okay, I'll check it out. And then it was awesome, and very much like Tremors, I was like, well, I got to show this awesome movie to my good friend Fredo here.
I mean, that's a bit of how I got sucked into that movie, this movie as well. Is just the reference to Johnny. Oh, what? It's got Johnny. Maybe there's got some Radiohead bangers in this movie. It's like no, it's. I mean, there's some bangers.
pretty
but,
A bunch of very
avant-garde.
exotic percussion.
Yeah.
Actually, this is a great segue. The whole radio talk into. Connor was mentioning we were considering between 2 people when we were looking at who was sort of vying to do this episode. That's the kind of podcast we are. Sought after. Everyone's like fucking backstabbing and talking shit so they can get on an episode. But
Yeah,
Connor,
Keith popped the other guy's tires, so he couldn't show up tonight.
But yeah, Connor mentioned that both the people we were considering are like massive Radiohead fans. And I think between the 4 of us, this 4th person shall remain anonymous for now, we all kind of like I have this very much shared love of Radiohead that is kind of like fed into one another's love. Like I'm going to
Sure.
say his name now. My buddy Josh Kipperstock was always a big Radiohead fan. He introduced me to radio. He always was listening, and I always said, Tom York is a douchebag, I'm not going to listen. Then I get in the car, and they're listening to Hail to the Thief, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? And then one of my best memories is hanging out with the two of you, listening to Hail to the Thief in my car. And I feel like Keith like really kind of fed into my love and like showed me some more Radiohead. And I know Connor has said in the past that I have shown him some Radiohead.
Oh yeah,
material
you
he
got
was
me into
unaware with.
Radiohead. Also, Hail to the Thief.
2 hours of Radiohead coming up. No, I'm just joking. I'm just joking. I just thought it, you know, it's something we all really fucking love, and it's a good thing to talk about in the context of the fucking composition of this movie,
Which is amazing.
We can just talk about even just the very intro of the
yeah,
movie.
I
right?
was literally thinking the same thing.
That fluttering, like rising violin that Johnny starts out the
super
soundtrack
dissonant.
with.
Yeah,
you feel like you're about to just step into like a horror movie.
Yeah,
you know, taking place in the West.
Yeah, there's a lot of horror movie vibes, which is it contrasts what's happening so interestingly. Where you're just like, why is this so unsettling? Like this dude's just trying to get some gold.
Yeah,
it's so interesting y'all picked up on that because Paul Thomas Anderson has said that underneath it all, he was always making a horror movie. He based his writing of Daniel Plainview, the character. Okay, well, let's preface this very quickly. This is Desert Month. We're doing desert movies.
Yeah.
We did Tremors, No Country for Old Men, and now we're doing There Will Be Blood. So we're kind of exploring some themes of the idea of desert. What does a desert evoke, right, to each one of us? Connor, do you want to go over your 9 matrices for desert movie making?
Yeah, so this is just what I jotted down before we did any of the movies. Just kind of like when I think about desert, what does it evoke in me? Like, what is the kind of deeper themes I would expect to get from a desert story? And so number 1, I had hopelessness and futility. Number 2 is isolation, sanctity of water, spiritual desolation and awakening.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of that in this. Beauty of nature, silence, man versus nature, Lovecraftian horror, and insanity. And just because I know Lovecraftian horror sounds weird, and if you haven't listened to the other episodes, you're probably wondering why that's there. The way I'm thinking of Lovecraftian horror in this context is more just feeling like a lack of a better way to say it, like an ant in a wasteland, where you just feel overwhelmed by the sheer brutality and vastness of nature.
Last episode we said the cold indifference of the universe a lot.
Yeah.
And I would sort of like lobby that when we come up with our official sort of like curriculum for a desert movie, I would probably say, you know, maybe changing it to something a little bit more general there. But I feel like the Lovecraftian horror thing is very evocative, and I love that element of it. So some of the things I talked about are cinematographic. I fucking nailed it that time.
I'm killing
big wide shots, good establishing shots, show a lot of that desert. I want to see that desert, baby. I've also, since No Country for Old Men, sky contrasted to desert is beautiful and necessary for good execution of cinematography in a desert setting.
That's a good point.
The color palette for this movie was actually very similar to last week's. There was a lot of these like beiges and yellows, a lot of blues. There's some really beautiful tinges of hopeful greens in there, and black. Black is a very important color in this movie. But one of the things that I wanted to just get into right off the bat. Well, I guess Keith, you wanna.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just tack in like a couple things,
Yeah.
or just like maybe corroborate like a few things, because like that point about indifference, like that was one of the things I had kind of written down, is the desert's indifference.
Corroborate away, my guy.
We're corroborating. So yeah, just that the setting itself is just reinforcing that the nature of the desert is not there to be either for or like against the character. It simply just is. Just this vast wasteland. And it kind of holds this, the other point was like this mirage of civilization. Like we are, as a people, trying to enter this barren landscape and turn it into something viable.
Yeah.
And that, that's kind of like a theme I see throughout all these desert films. Like, why are you here in this desolate wasteland doing this? And, it often comes down to this desire for, greed and the corruption that comes from that. And all these corresponding themes that then lead into that point about isolation. Like the more you strive for that greed, the more you just approach that madness and isolation and just,
it's almost kind of like Oasis as Mirage, right? To try to build a city in the middle of an uninhabitable, like, area is such like hubris,
Hmm.
right? And I think there is some of that. I've talked about themes of self-reliance, and I think that the whole hubris thing really, really comes into play in this one
Oh yeah.
a lot more. What I was gonna mention earlier is Paul Thomas Anderson and Daniel Day-Lewis collaborated on the development of this character. It's of course based off of the book
Oil.
Oil by Upton Sinclair. But what I heard is that 150 of the first pages kind of tell the story of this guy, J. Arnold Ross. That's the
Yeah.
original character from Oil that they very loosely based
Daniel Plainview.
Daniel Plainview on, and he has a son named Bunny, and that's sort of like HW. But the other influences with the whole horror movie thing is that Dracula, this insatiable lust, this insatiable greed that drives Daniel Plainview. Like I said, he said that the whole time he was kind of thinking he was making a horror movie.
Wow.
And then the last one is Edward Downey,
Yeah.
who was a real life oil magnate.
Yep.
They filmed that last scene in his mansion.
Oh no way.
Wow.
Yeah, and all those accomplishments that he kind of are like based on Doheney's life. I don't know if that's how you say it, but that's how I'm gonna say it.
I mean, that mansion felt like an oil tycoon's mansion.
Yeah.
Something about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like every single piece in there was so like intricate and designed. Like I remember when they walk in, spoilers for ahead, but like when they come into his office and just like even the chairs are just like such like fancy, crazy, nice chairs.
Yeah.
He wrote the role because he wanted Daniel Day-Lewis, because that's the only person he could really picture doing it. It's funny because he has the same name as the character, but Daniel also, I love to get into this shit. God is my judge is what the name means, which is so perfect when you think about this character.
Yeah, and
But
just like so many
kind
themes
of
in the story.
ironic in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. And just like it's really interesting to me that this is a character based on a book based on a character, and it's like three different layers of like peeling back some entrepreneur oil man.
Yeah, I mean it's odd like how like complex but basic Daniel kind of comes across in the film, and I think it's because of that. There's just these overlapping like entries into what his character is between what you just went over. Like it's a very unique way of
Let's
approaching
hit
a
her-
character.
Let's hit her play by play. Like we were saying, the opening.
Yeah.
We get the like title of the film and the score kicking in immediately.
Oh
This isolated shot of these three mountains. And Keith, we carpooled here today, and Keith brought up he wanted to like tease me just a little bit. So he said, the number 3 is in this movie a lot. And he challenged me. He said, "We're gonna figure this shit out, dude."
The number 3 is.
Yeah, and I have a note about 3 later on, but we'll just and then immediately big wide fucking establishing shot. It's clearly a desert, so check on my fucking list.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
This is a desert movie,
Big
baby.
old check, baby.
That's all we needed. We're good.
All right, wrap it up, babies.
Yeah, I think one of the things that always stands out a lot to me about this opening sequence is just how long the movie goes before anyone says anything. Not even this first sequence of him getting the gold, but even after that, once he's made some money and he's now digging for oil for the first time, still no dialogue.
No, you don't. But there is him talking to himself. There she is. There she is.
Yes. I wrote that line down just because I think that's, again, like spiritual desolation being one of my main themes for desert.
So good for this movie.
But quintessentially, we go through like it's something like 15 or 20 minutes of basically dialogue silence.
Yeah, which is super interesting, really bold way to start a movie. But on the note of the there she is, I thought that was the first kind of main look into who Daniel Plainview is, where he has a broken leg. He almost just died, but all he's focused on is
There she is. There she is. I found her. I found the gold.
Self-reliance. I think it is like a silver mine that he finds in the beginning.
Oh, is it silver?
I think, and it actually, I wrote down silver, and he has the silver tongue,
Ooh.
But I love how much we're focused on his self-reliance, and the beginning of the film is about setting up the skills of our I would call him like an anti-protagonist, right? This like sort of like we will see this deeply corrupted human being who we will follow through. But Yeah, immediately we see how driven he is.
Yeah.
His ambition.
Yeah.
Like that shot of him dragging himself away. I also like
Yeah.
a shot of self-reliance, him huddled like that, like over like all the implications of digging the mine by himself, huddled by himself in the cold against like the night sky, and then dragging himself all the way back with a broken leg. This guy's not fucking around.
No,
Well, the physical symbolism of him starting literally at the bottom, start at the bottom, now we here.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
That's a good point,
he's,
too.
He's down in that pit, and it transcends from there, and obviously going upwards into wealth and power and all these things, and then the inevitable downplay of that later on. But yeah, symbolism through this movie is immense.
Yeah.
I also, you saying that made me think. I studied a little bit of tarot when I was writing a short film, and the hanged man is like the position that he is like in during those parts. The guy who's like hanging by one leg upside down, and I feel like I don't know if intentional, but just something to think about when doing a deep analysis.
Yeah.
a bit.
And just like you guys were saying, that was something that was really like in my mind the whole time, is this man is ambition incarnate. And I think that's a lot of what this movie is about, is what is ambition, what is it worth.
Yeah, I wanted to really quickly hit on some of the big production players in this. I have a little list here. Robert Elswit is the cinematographer. He's worked with George Clooney, very well known for collaborating with Paul Thomas Anderson. This is the film that kicks off the collaboration between Daniel Day-Lewis and Paul Thomas Anderson, or as I know them, DDL and PTA, my daddies. And we got production design by Jack Fisk, art direction by David Crank, and set decoration by Jim Erickson, costume design by Mark Bridges. All of this stuff very important to convey the whole sentiment, the whole vibe of the movie, and there are sort of those unseen elements that work to just boost the performances, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's just like an extremely immersive film in general. The whole thing just feels like you're there, and it pulls you in, and all those technical aspects you're talking about is a big part of how it pulls you in.
Yeah, and like that's that scene too, kind of cutting back to like the mine and the silver, is like when there she is, like you can feel within his character at that point that this finding this isn't about how lustrous and amazing this like piece of silver is. It's about what he knows it will grant him in terms of power and wealth. It's nothing about like the the lust for finding unique and treasurable things. It's just, what can I get from this?
100%.
And that 35 millimeter, baby, so tactile, like really adds to the whole vibe of the film as well. And I feel like with what you're saying about that whole moment at the bottom where he finds the silver, just the way that the screen looked, the use of light in this film is amazing. Light and darkness, so many super low light shots that are like super well executed. Even like backlighting, which is something that you're often told to avoid, but that is like super tastefully done in this film.
Yeah, and it's interesting. We kind of did this on purpose, where these two movies came out the same year. They were both competing for Best Picture amongst a bunch of other categories. No Country for Old Men won Best Picture. Do you guys have any guesses what the two awards There Will Be Blood won?
I know what they are.
Okay, Keith.
I believe it won Best Score.
No.
No?
Niet.
Man. Best Director?
Nope.
No.
Jeez.
This is fun.
Yeah.
Humiliating, I guess.
I definitely, because it's so good.
It's
like I could see any of these things
best
winning.
Actor. Yeah, cinematography, best actor.
Yeah, actor was gonna be my next guess, but that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's like No Country for Old Men cinematography is so freaking good, but There Will Be Blood is somehow like even better.
Yeah.
Like, it's insane.
Yeah.
No doubt there. Both master classes in cinematography, but fuck, man. PTA too. I think he's like, of that sort of era of Hollywood, is probably like my favorite director of that sort of bunch.
Interesting. Yeah, he's fantastic. I was just saying the other day, really the only movies I love him for are Boogie Nights and There Will Be Blood. But there's like quite a few. I haven't seen The Master. I haven't seen
Oh, man.
Punch Drunk Love. I know he has others that are popular as well. So I gotta get into some.
Magnolia.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
haven't seen
Magnolia.
Master,
I haven't
but
seen Magnolia either. Yeah,
The only one I haven't seen is Mystic Pizza.
that's great.
What the
I've
fuck?
never heard of it.
Yeah, but dude, fuck. Honestly, The Master is one of. I mean, it's between that and There Will Be Blood.
For your favorite?
Oh yeah, The Master. Oof, so good. I mean, Boogie Nights does have a very fun sort of ride to it.
Yeah, I mean, that
Um,
one gets really dark too, but
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's also Hard Eight. That's his first film.
Mm.
That one's kind of fun as well, but also like, I mean, this guy has some weight to his storytelling. You know, I think
Oh, yeah.
he wants to tell deeply human stories that evoke deep emotions and deep emotional responses from people.
yeah. Another thing just occurred talking about this is something that really stood out to me is that this movie is definitely a very slow burn overall, I would say. However, the pacing of the editing really stood out to me in that everything is like really tightly and smoothly intertwined. So it would usually, like, very often it would start playing the audio from the next scene before cutting to the next scene.
Yeah.
And it's doing all sorts of little tricks like that, or like it'll be
Yeah.
he'll start talking and then it'll be cutting to other things while he's talking, and then it'll like come back to him.
Yeah, the first one you mentioned I wrote because I really like it. It's called a J cut, and
Ah.
that's the style of editing. And those are accompanied a lot in this film by some really tasteful cross dissolves, which
Yeah.
is the sort of transition where the two scenes bleed into one another. Very, very artfully done. I like the editing. Yeah. One of the things that can be easily overlooked, but really well executed. And one of the things we mentioned before we started, I actually watched this twice.
Yes, and I've been dying to know why. I wanted to hear this on the podcast.
So, what happened was last night I got off of work, had a couple drinks, had a fried bologna sandwich down at fucking bait shop on Capitol Hill. Dude, do not miss
The fried bologna.
the fried bologna sandwich. They also have really good chicken tacos. Check out Bait Shop if you're ever in Seattle. I love that spot. But I got home and I was like, all right, time to get everything squared away for like how I'm gonna watch the film. Like the day that we're recording is my day off, so I can take the morning to watch it, take some notes. Then I was gonna do some editing. But I find where I'm gonna watch it. Not gonna plug anyone unless somebody wants to send me some money. And then I started watching it just to kind of see how it looked, because when I was watching No Country for Old Men, I was like, oh, am I having some weird issues? And I don't know, because I am so into cinematography, I get really in my head about like buffering and shit. So anyway, I started watching it and I'm like, this thing is cooking. This is 158. Fuck it, baby. Feels like 15.8. So I'm just watching and watching, and I get like an hour in and I'm like, okay, I need to go to sleep. It is kind of late. So I go to bed, I wake up early in the morning. I finish the hour and 38 after that. And I was like, once I had kind of started, I was like, I'm going to go one run, no notes.
Oh, nice.
Second run, I go in and I do notes. So yeah, I've watched it twice.
That's awesome.
First time broken, second time unbroken. Yeah,
I mean,
it was great. It was
the-
super fun.
the pacing is, yeah, it's so good that like even me, yeah, I just did the singular watch, but I was, pausing very often to take notes. And despite that, I still felt like I breezed through the film. Like
That's
it just
awesome.
kind of I was like, oh wow, I'm like 2 hours in. When did this happen? It's very surprising how quickly you kind of get through it without noticing.
Yeah. I think the immersion is a big part of that. Like we were talking about, where it just feels like you're in it.
Yeah, you get
Yeah.
so drawn in. I thought it was interesting. This movie does give us concrete years. We start off at 1898.
Yep.
Then eventually I think 1902.
Yep.
Something that No Country for Old Men didn't do. I just wanted to bring up very importantly, at the beginning we see him sign his name. That's how we know who he is. And it's so important to a character like this, a businessman. his signature, like that's the signature he uses to close all these fucking deals. And then it's mirrored at the end when we see him sort of
Yeah.
devolve into his like alcoholic self, and he like, you know, you can see it's
Well, he's
not as good, and he like intentionally kind of like dries it and
in
like
in the
smudges
first
it.
one where he signs his name. It's at the bottom of a check. I'm trying to recall in the final signature he does. Was that also a check, or was
I think
that
he's writing a check. I think in the
okay.
first one he's receiving
receive?
money.
Yeah, and
And
then writing
in
it out.
the
That
end,
makes
he's
sense.
sending money out.
Yep.
Glad you guys noticed that. That's cool.
And yeah, there are concrete years, except for because like you can only kind of like get into the guessing realm. I think with after the 1902.
No, they do say.
Do they say
1911.
1911? Okay,
Yeah.
I wasn't
Yeah.
sure if that I may have just
1911 is
skipped
where the
over it.
majority of the story takes place,
Yeah.
although we don't really know how long this whole process
which
is
I
taken.
love.
Yeah.
They give you these concrete years, but there's still a lot of uncertainty.
Yep.
And speaking of which, I love how quickly we see the operation grow. Like the beginning is really this cool sort of like montage that can breathe. And as we know, we like montages here at Cinema Forecast.
Oh, yeah.
It's like this like extended sort of like a lot of stuff that's being set up, but very artfully done, engaging, and like you said, Connor, it like pulls you in. It is immersing you in the environment. It's dunking you in the oil.
I am realizing that this story, going back to the theme of threes, this takes place over 30 years. Another
Oh.
three thrown in there.
You're
I think
really
it's technically-
teasing this 3 thing.
I think it's technically 29.
Well, 29, like in terms of number, but if you count like the whole year, like starting from the beginning point.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
It's a good.
There's something to it. There's something to this
it, dude. Some to it.
Well, last time a big theme was sitting down in No Country for Old Men. So
okay.
for,
Connor
for
loves
me,
sitting
yeah,
down.
there was a lot of sitting down, and I was noticing it. So
I
maybe
was
that's
like,
what.
I'm sitting down right now recording this.
Oh my
How did
God.
they know? Let's
But as
see.
his operation grows, like I think that sort of is very cool. See the development, the drawing of the fucking drill into reality.
Yeah, very cool that they are actually making the plans for it. It really shows that these guys are pioneering.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, you see the evolution of him making his life more efficient to make as much money as humanly possible, basically. Because you start with the small scale silver mining by himself.
Yeah.
He realizes like I mean
Isolation.
this is both too tedious, too slow. I can get injured doing this. And then he moves on. He finds like the early. I was trying to figure out because that oil looks different than the later oil we see on the Sunday Ranch.
Oh, is that right?
When early on they're digging, it was an early oil that had a couple names. It went under the name asphalt, as well as butamil.
I didn't even know there were different types of oil.
Yeah,
So this
I
is
was like,
news to me.
what is this like substance that is? It's like that muck.
Yeah.
It's gold muck.
it had mud.
Gold goop or black goop.
Dude, the first shot of it too is so fucking disturbing.
When
it's
it,
like
when they're pouring it into the little hole they've dug out. Is that what you're talking about?
Isn't the first one when the pin
Oh.
goes in and it
Yeah.
starts to burble up?
Yeah.
And you can see it's like this inky blackness. Like to me, it represented the void, corruption of nature, exploitation of Mother Nature in this, evil way, and like that sort of seeping into like the whole, all of like humanity in a way, right?
Well, I think the sketch comes after they find they have shovels. They're down that pit, digging through the goop. And butamin, that was the other name for it. So it starts with that, and then it has that really intense, where he's like breathing super deep, and like it's not just from exhaustion. He's breathing in the fumes to recognize like this is my wealth. Like I'm inhaling my wealth.
Well,
right
it
now.
looked like he was like almost like he was getting overwhelmed by it. Like he was like almost like gonna like faint, and the guy's like, dude, take a breath. So he like tilts his I did it. I tilted my head way far away from the mic. But like he tilts his head back so that he can like breathe fresh air was kind of my read on it as well. Like there was some sort of like gas there. And this is kind of highlighting the lengths that he will go for his greed.
Yeah.
There's a series of different accidents, right? Like I love like all the procedural shit when they first have the pin before they have a big fancy thing, I think, and like we watch all of the little pieces of how it happens and it falls in. Then the guy goes in and the procedure of him pulling the pin out of it, like swinging it back and forth, like that nitty gritty just works so well with the survival aspect of and the self-reliance necessary in a desert movie.
And I think it does play into these like a similar theme with No Country for Old Men, where we were talking about why do we keep seeing them get so hurt and like they spend so much time like bandaging their wounds and stuff. I think that he's really trying to show us just how rigorous and brutal and what these guys are putting themselves through in order to do this.
Yeah, and the limp too throughout the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
God, his physical acting.
Oh my goodness,
his
bro!
facial expressions.
Don't even get me started
No,
on the
I'll get
acting.
you ended on this, dude. But yeah, it's so good, and you just a consistent thing. Like, there's no undoing that performance. It's so fucking perfect.
Yeah, that was the single thing that stood out to me the most on my first viewing of this film. I didn't know who Daniel Day-Lewis was, and as soon as he starts talking in the scene after this, I was just pulled in. I was like, "What? Who is this guy?" Ladies and gentlemen, he just the way he speaks, the way he holds himself, he is insane in this movie. For a long time, I felt like this is the best performance I've ever seen. And now I don't know if I would say that definitively, just because, like, I don't know, there's so many good performances out there, but it's up there, man.
He's so good and just all he does. I mean, Gangs of New York was the first movie that drew me into him, and then that was like, yeah, the Johnny Greenwood reference was like, you know, some level of the draw me into this movie, but then also, yeah, Daniel Day-Lewis as a whole is just, I mean, he's just his ability to dedicate to a character the entire time and look for flaws. Like, I'm sure he's sitting there for hours rewatching all the replays of his work, trying to look for, okay, we need to redo this scene. Like, I don't feel this is right. I'm sure there's like plenty of that within his work.
Yeah, he definitely strikes me as a perfectionist.
Yeah.
Dude, speaking on Gangs in New York, so the kid who plays the grown-up HW, well, not the grown-up, but like the
boy.
baby, the boy,
Mm-hmm.
HW isn't an actor. He was a kid who they filmed this in West Texas, and he was at a school nearby, and they told the mom they wanted to get the mom on board. So to find out who Daniel Day-Lewis was, she watched Gangs of New York, and she was horrified. She was like, "No fucking way." So the crew got a copy of Age of Innocence to show it to her to kind of like convince her, like, no, like, see, he's like quite the gentleman. Along the lines of HW, also through the montage, we set up this sort of friend, like that, like sort of right hand man that
it goes unnamed. I believe
Daniel Plainview has, and he's caring for this baby, and we have no idea about the situation. Love that shit. It's never really explained, and then he dies, like killed by this contraption that Daniel designed himself, and I think we really see like how his greed just like causes all the tragedy in his life.
Yeah, and I just gotta say something about the violence in this movie in particular.
So fucked.
Yeah, it's always really like striking, and violence is striking in general, but something about the way it's done, and I can't quite put my finger on what it is in this movie in particular, just always like really gets under my skin.
Well, it's pretty much all like singular strikes.
Yeah, I think it's just how sudden it is. That's a big part of it. Yeah,
You know, we have strike one from the first man that goes down into the well. We have the next man who goes down into the well, and then we have the gunshot.
Yeah.
The only one that is not a singular strike is with a bowling pin.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even the part where he falls in the beginning is like, fuck, that's violent.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, I remember, and I didn't really feel it as much this time, just because I've seen the movie a couple times now. But the whole tension around the dynamite going off, I remember the first time I watched it really had me on the edge of my seat. So I just wanted to throw that out there, just like because you see him light it, and he slowly makes his way up the ladder, and you're just like, oh god, what is gonna happen? Yeah,
it's like we say with countdowns and timers. You know?
And a part of the story, I think, is meant to tell the tale of like the violence towards Earth itself. The dynamite to blow up parts of the earth, the striking into the earth, feels like striking at the heart of the earth to release, the Earth's blood, the Earth's oil from the ground. Very symbolic.
There will be blood.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's that in a way kind of feels like the first strike of blood in the movie is the Earth bleeding itself.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because I was thinking about the title, and it's like, there will be blood. That is a promise that is delivered upon. But like, yeah, the oil aspect of Mother Nature, I think, is also a really good take on what this title is about.
But yeah, I mean, Daniel gets smart to the aspect of injury, doing this kind of work early on from the fall, and from there on, he's basically hands off in terms of so much of the dirty work.
No, man, he's in the well digging with the guy dies next to him.
Well, no, I mean after like that shorter intro when we get to where he builds the contraption, right, and that's more like supervisor work where they're going down and they are getting, these bludgeoning hits to the head, or they're the ones down in the well with the cigarette,
I think there's an argument to be made that he wants to retain some semblance of hands-onness.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Like later on when with the cables and everything.
Yeah, I was gonna bring up the cables because I was wondering, why is he doing this? And and I do think
he
it's
insists on doing it.
it's because he wants to be the one to throw the final, the pin through the table at the end of that journey and stuff. Like, it's important that he's the one.
He wants to pin the tail on the friggin' donkey.
Yes, he does.
And like, insofar as to fucking even ignore his injured son.
Yeah.
But when they're at the bottom and the guy dies right next to him, there's this awesome shot where like Daniel is like
his
inky
eyes?
blackness, and you see his one eye from the side, and it's a shot that is later like done again. And I'll bring it up when it happens.
Yeah. No, that shot really did stick out to me too.
What I really wanted to just emphasize is I think Daniel just gets smart to like when he's in a truly dangerous situation, so he doesn't, he wants to, he has a competition in him. Like, obviously he wants to be a part of it, like be a part of the nitty-grittiness to some effect, but also be aware of when it's like, I should have my lackeys do this.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
over time, I think he gets to that level of understanding, but also at the same time, I think a portion of the joy he found in doing this kind of work dissipates from him because he's just having a flow of money reach his pocketbook by the end of the movie. He's not actually a part of any of it after a certain point in time. He's just completely disconnected.
I mean, I think a lot of the movie is just about how everything he's kind of slowly coming into, all the power he's ever wanted, does not fulfill this hole that he has in his heart.
Yeah, absolutely. And we like immediately it's set up he is addicted to greed, and kind of like teasing his relationship with alcohol as well. When his unnamed friend dies, he has to take care of this baby HW, and he like is trying to give him like whiskey, which is something that happens
comes up again. Yeah, absolutely. And just really quick, there's one little scene here that really stood out to me and stands out even more retroactively. In terms of spiritual desolation, the father of HW brings the baby over to the pile of the oil and gives him the little baptism mark on his head with the oil.
Right before that too, he puts his hand up,
yeah.
covered in oil, his palm. Like I feel like the white hand of Sauron in a
like
way,
religious ecstasy. It's very religious imagery.
Hey, there was a Lord of the Rings reference, not for me. I don't know what count we're at now. I don't know. We haven't brought it up.
We prime the pump and then we're just letting it roll. Daddy-o.
But yeah, that symbolism is, it feels like in a way he's marking all the men that are there working with him as like, in a way I now own you with this marking, and then with HW, like
the baby being
you are now
baptized
my
in oil.
Tool that I will use.
Well, he doesn't do it; it's his friend who does it.
Which is interesting.
Which is so interesting.
Yeah, not so much that he does it, but
it's almost like how just the chance of like how events like unfold or something.
It's like you are marked for this industry in a way.
Yeah.
And since so much of this movie is about like religion and exploring, Daniel's view on religion and spirituality, just like the absolute corruption of baptism here through oil is just like really.
And I had a side thought too, is a random thought I was just thinking about, is because the name HW was something.
Homework.
Well,
I
perhaps.
hate homework.
But HW is something that Paul came up with. It wasn't part of the Sinclair's book. So
Yeah.
that's where I was like thinking, oh, well, maybe it came from Sinclair's book. No, it's like, well, Paul came up with it. And it's like, is this maybe a reference to some effect to H.W. Bush? Because I was like, well, the history of H.W. Bush is that he started an oil firm, and that's how he led into his position in politics later in life. So I was like, is there some kind of weird, not fully confirmed, but I was just like, this is an odd thought. I'd like to maybe explore as a, just a.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
could be
Very
something there.
interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
And I just, this is something that, and it's explored throughout the movie, but just why did he take the baby, right? And I think that this scene, even if he's giving the baby booze, this is kind of, it's funny watching this. I remember Daniel being a monster, which he definitely is, especially by the end of the movie. But that was kind of my main, the main way I remembered him. And I had kind of forgotten the more tender, soft stuff. There is humanity in him. And I did find myself kind of feeling bad for him throughout the movie. And I think this scene here on the train, where he's giving him the binky with the booze on it.
Those are separate scenes.
No, when he's on the train, yeah, he.
No, he's just being hella cute with him on the train.
You're right.
The scene on the train is super adorable.
Yeah, you're right. I was mixing it up.
It is one of the most humanizing scenes for sure. But yeah, I think it's almost in kind of contrast too, because it's the end of that sort of series of. I think it's him with the baby with the binky, and then it's him
You're right. Yeah.
on the train, and that's when there's an awesome J cut of them on the train being hella cute together, and we start to hear the ladies and gentlemen, the whole I'm an oil man speech.
Yeah.
I'm an oil man.
Just a quick cut back too on the first incepted tool that he designed and sketched out and then started using and it failed. Part of me wonders because of how deplorable Daniel ends up being and how master mindful he is about every action he seems to take. A part of me wonders, obviously there's no real confirmation in that scene, but I wonder if he maybe set that machine up to fail.
I don't think so, but
I don't think so. It's just a thought. It's one of those things within this movie where how questioning I am of Daniel,
Right.
where it's maybe probably not, but it's a thought sitting there in my mind where maybe he was such a terrible person even at this point.
Yeah, I
that he could have done that.
I
Keith
think
is getting tinfoil out,
No,
making
we
himself
are
a little hat.
absolutely.
yeah,
Maybe a little popcorn too.
I think
Buckle up.
he's an asshole the whole movie, but I don't think he is a psychopath until HW loses his hearing. That's when you kind of start to see an actual decline into madness, I think.
Absolutely. And I think it it fully acclimates, when the whole events finalize with Henry.
I really think that in contrast to Anton Chigurh, he is kind of really sort of more of an examination of narcissism and ego.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely think Anton did, but Anton also has principles, and we see Daniel Plainview has no principles. The dollar is his, the almighty dollar is his religion. And just responding to the question you sort of asked, why did he take the baby? We get a very so we get that cute scene on the train,
Yeah.
cutting into
Him using him.
using him, and we sort of see this
Right.
oh, this is a very practical deployment of the child.
Right.
And later on, Gene definitely makes a comment. The random dude who comes on the train, to kind of cement, he puts into words this idea that we're already kind of seeing formulate at this point, where he's I'm a family man. See, I have a kid. He's right here.
Yeah.
Don't say anything, kid.
Yeah, and I do think it's both. I think he is exploiting HW, but I do think that this is also Daniel's attempt to hold on to the only humanity he has.
He has obviously tones of grace within him because we can look at points with Mary and whatnot, but even something like that he still does, and just so much malice behind it in a way, because the scene with Mary where he's talking to her is no more hitting now, and right beside him is her father.
Right. What a passive passive aggressive way.
Yeah, exactly. Just driving home how he's like, I'm going to do the good thing, or it's like, this is essentially a competition. I'm going to be a better father, quote unquote, than you in a way. Like there's something within him driving him for
Well,
that.
we'll get to it in a little bit because I do have some thoughts on the whole Mary thing, but don't
For
want to
sure.
jump around too much.
It is kind of weird, but yeah. So we do cut to 1911 with this whole sort of like, we get his whole business pitch, which is good because it sets up his business pitch to like then we kind of know his modus operandi for when he approaches Little Boston. And I do like that immediately he sees this indecisiveness throughout the community and he's like, oh, I can't manipulate them. So he goes and he targets someone specific, right? And he goes out to this specific farmer or whatever, Mr. Bankside, to kind of like bargain with him to see if he can like still like sneak in on the oil that way.
Yeah, and during at the end of that initial pitch he's giving, I think it's really interesting that we see the first themes of his rage and hatred for humanity outshining his greed here, right? He can't stand the bickering, and he's leaving it too much confusion. No, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, just stonewalls them immediately. Is like, if there's not either a unanimous or mostly unanimous decision behind,
I think it's just the bickering, man. I think he's just disgusted by people, and he just I think that can be that it's just grinding up against him too much.
I think there's a double read that works really well in the context of the film, which is first time you watch it, you're like, this guy's a good businessman. He's like, I'm not gonna get in this.
Sure,
this is messy.
That's a good point too.
And then I think it is really a little bit of that, but also what Connor is saying, which is like he is disgusted by people, like a classic "por qué no los dos" kind of fucking situation, right?
Yeah.
And I do love, like we see the way that he's using HW sort of like as a tool, appealing to him, talking to the parents about their children, and then we see how he sort of hates talking about the mom, right? She says, "Can I ask you, where's your wife?" And he says, "Oh, she died in childbirth," and he's very like sort of short about it.
Oh yeah,
yeah. I mean,
and it just keeps getting shorter throughout the film.
The intro, like,
I don't wish to talk of it.
The intro dialogue being a sales pitch is like, kind of just reminiscent of exactly what we saw Daniel the entire like 15-20 minute silent intro. Is just that he, if he was like more of like a introspective, like interested in emotions and feelings and things like this, then we would have seen like some kind of opening dialogue scene about him just being confiding in someone or being something to deal with the emotions and trauma that he had just dealt with earlier in this film.
I mean, he's all business,
but just like how the first like writing of who we see of this character, it's his name on a check. The first words we hear from this character is, "Let me sell you something."
Yeah.
We never see him with a woman. Like, I'm not saying that's like important, but it is often something we see in movies and in stories. And it's not like there's not the opportunity to see him with a woman, but it's just like the film is so focused and he is so focused that it really never comes up,
And that'll be important actually later on here. We'll like I had a point specifically about that later on with Eli and whatnot. So yeah, it's
interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Next note I have is Paul coming.
Paul Sunday.
And it is funny that you mentioned that Daniel shares the same name as the actor, because we also have Paul Dano here and Paul.
I have that note right here. When they're talking to each other in this scene, they're calling each other their actual name.
Yeah.
I also put this is kind of like a call to adventure.
Oh yeah, that's a good. Yeah, interesting.
A bit.
I love that. Paul's like, "What church do you belong to?" And he's like, "I enjoy all faiths. They're all great. I like them all."
He's just like a total like fucking capitalist. Also, this is where we see Kieran Hines as well. He has such a great fucking face. Lots of people probably know him from Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
He's a great fucking character actor.
Yeah, he's really good.
And you see, because we get the marking at the end is like, Paul was the smart one. Like we see like the absolute wit in Paul early on.
Paul is smart. Yeah, he's sharp.
He's like, where are you from? That would be telling you.
Yeah, they keep trying to goad it out of him. But
I think this really sets up the intellectual battle like between Eli and Daniel later on as well. Like we're kind of like setting that up, right? And I do love that he is clever, and that is like this is sort of the first time we see. Because we saw him in a negotiation where he just dominated the family, just comes in there, Mr. Bankside, Miss Bankside, whatever, and immediately gets those wells. Then that's when Paul's showing up at his door, like, I see you built this well, I want to sell you this information. And he's like ready to just like wheel and deal him, and he's like, no, you're not gonna be sly with me, because he's also very snide throughout the movie. You know, Daniel has this like snide, like sort of like looking down his nose at everyone, and like his eyes sort of light up when he's going back and forth, like, oh, a challenge.
Yeah, he's kind of into it, but it also pisses him off.
Can I say I had this take about this movie that it's like a Western, but it's about the death of the Western, and there's a bunch of standoffs, but they're like dialogue standoffs.
Oh, that's a really cool
like
take.
Him and Henry later on, like there's a lot of these sort of like pew pews, but like verbal pew pews.
I like that.
Yeah, and I just nothing to do with that, but I had a kind of secondary thought is like, you know, about how we had the silent intro, and this was the time period where silent films were kind of first coming into play.
Yeah.
So it was like another little like side thought on like different thematic things from other, you know, types of you know,
I mean,
genres
silence,
of movies.
isolation, it foreshadows the eventual like deafness of our good boy HW.
That's a good point too. So he gives him $500 for the location, and it's so funny to me because, you know, it's hard to, like, unless you are looking it up throughout the movie, it's hard to really know how much is $500 worth back in 1911. A lot, but, you know, not a crazy amount, but it's just like funny. It's a funny frame of reference for me for the rest of the film because, you know, later on he's like, I will give you $100,000 if I don't have to go to church. And here he's like $500 for like potentially, you know,
it's a great
life
time.
changing.
I'm trying to remember. I did look into it a little bit about when I was looking up like the 5,000 and like 10,000. I can't remember which one it was. It was either 5,000 was around like 1,500 or sorry, 150,000 like in today's money.
That sounds about right.
Or it was 10,000 is that much in terms of today's money.
Yeah, a lot of money. He says this to. I love. Like, this is still in his character development where, like I said, he's not like insane, but he is an asshole. And just the way he says,
very snide.
If I find out you have lied to me, I'm going to take more than my money back. Is that all right with you?
like the way he puts it, like it's even more jovial than that, where he's just like, we're buddies.
I also really like all the questions that they ask are like setting up their expertise in this sort of like field, because he is a person who is good at stuff. He is an oil man. He is good at getting oil. He knows the right questions to ask to know whether or not it's going to be like a good lot. And I like that HW asks, because he mentions he has sisters. He says, how many sisters do you have? And it's a cute little foreshadowing because he ends up marrying Mary, right?
Oh, yeah, that's a great point.
And it's like set up even right there.
And just how different HW is, that he is interested in the people.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
The next note I have is the awesome shot of the car driving into the town on the train station.
It's a clear like sign of the times kind of thing, because the car only came out. It was like 10 or 15 years before.
Yeah, that's a good point
that
too.
point in the film. It's very kind of recent in terms of it upscaling and just seeing this modern like contraption in the middle of the desert essentially. With these scattered out of place looking homes and businesses all over it. But like, the men that were building this saw the picture of the future where, there'd be roads connecting everything, roads to the church, roads to, everything in between.
Well, that's the first place the road will go, Keith. The church.
That's so fucking funny. It's some great desert shots of like isolated figures in a frame. Daniel and HW walking towards the Sunday farm with all their like camping gear on their backs. And then like when we get the exchange between him and Abel, it is like sort of this dance, right? Again with this whole sort of like thing that I'm talking about, that they're like these duels, these sort of like standoffs, right? These negotiations
Yeah.
that are had, and this sort of Southern propriety, or this sort of like pioneer sort of like politeness that we talked about last episode. Which actually, pioneer politeness, I think, is a better way to put it than the other ways I put it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a really interesting point. And I think it's the kind of exploitation of man here, and again, on the theme of spiritual desolation, the way how the Sunday family takes them in. Oh, you're hunting? Well, what can we get for you? Like, oh, sorry, we don't have any bread. Like, they're so genuinely sorry that they don't have like more to offer these random strangers.
Such an important setup too, that they don't have bread, because it will be a tool for manipulation later on.
Yep.
Right, and then Daniel, on the other hand, telling them we're hunting for quail, just using them from the start, just every single business angle that he can leverage here, he will, if it'll help him. And really quick, right before this, I just noted the music, because I think for most of the movie so far, the score has been very eerie and unsettling, and this is the first time where we get some kind of melancholy, like haunting, like really pretty, like it stood out to me as this
Right.
kind of transition and tone setter, and I think the music really does elevate the movie in that way because it's so quiet. It is such a quiet movie with so many just like big long shots, just like watching what's happening. Like the music does so much for that.
It
Yeah.
does oscillate between like a very traditional like violins, strings sort of like score, and this like animalistic like percussion, like
Yeah.
like strange, unusual, non-traditional instrumentation with this like auxiliary percussion. I think it is this really cool sort of oscillation between like the civilized and like the like un sort of like just insatiable greed.
Mm,
And we we get to like the only kind of moment where because Daniel's whole plan here is to quote unquote give them quail prices, because
Love
it's
that line.
the guise of we're here to hunt quail, and that's the only reason we're here, and the only person standing in his way, and it becomes this like the central kind of like opposing opposition is Eli and Daniel, kind of a little bit going back and forth through the rest of the film. But yeah, Eli's the only person trying to press him for, we want, what was it, $6 per acre.
Yeah.
Trying to get the most out of him. And Daniel, like, like trying to, well, we have oil here, Daniel. Is like, well, yeah, it could just be seepage. It could be nothing. You don't have any proof.
Yeah.
And who's going to get it? I'm the only one who can do something like that. And all these points kind of just manifest into, just this starting like ember and flame between the two characters, I guess.
It is a great little dance that they do. I love as well that like it starts off, he's talking to Abel and like being very coy. He uses HW. He appeals to like this sense of family to kind of manipulate Abel. Like, my boy's sick, right? Like, what the fuck? And then it very quickly is obvious that Eli is the one who's kind of like negotiating now. So he like turns to him, and it quickly goes from being about quail hunting to very obviously being about oil. Like he basically drops the act. But then at the end, to regain his fucking power over Eli in this conversation, because a lot of we in like script writing, people talk a lot about power, and whereas like the power held in like certain like scenes, and that is so many of the like all the scenes between Eli and Daniel are this dance of like who has the power. And so
Yeah.
Daniel says like, I could just go hunting for quail at another ranch, to just kind of like shut the kid down, right? And then he turns back to Abel, and that's when they like lock the deal in.
yeah, and then Eli takes the power back again because Daniel tries to shake his hand and he turns it into a prayer.
Yeah.
And then Daniel pulls away from the prayer. So yeah, it really is this
Yeah.
back and forth,
Yeah.
like
Going before this, when they actually find the oil, I do love it again, a kid with a gun, man, fuck. But I think again it plays on those themes of self-reliance and survival that we see in the desert. I also love HW is the one who steps into the oil. He's
Yeah.
the one who finds it. And then I had this whole sort of Prometheus thought throughout this film of like Daniel Plainview, like this hubris to take the fire of the gods and bring it back to humanity. And he dips the stick in the fucking oil and he lights it and he holds it up like that, you know? And then there's a moment later on as well where felt very Promethean.
Well, we get the flaming geyser later on with his. Oh
That's
my God,
exactly
such.
That's exactly what I was saying right there.
Okay, yeah. But yeah,
the
it's
orange glow
so
on
good.
his face, it's like the ecstasy. Yes, it's like being like seeing the flame of the gods, the magic, the power.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you there. The next
Earth.
scene I have is when he's buying all the land.
Every last square inch except for
bandies.
The bandies, which will be a very important detail
Yeah.
later.
Yeah.
I just love the way they're talking about it here, and it's also kind of symbolic of just like exploiting nature. Where I can't remember the exact verbiage they're using, but they're basically saying, "Can this be got?" And then eventually Daniel just says, "Can everything around here be got?"
Yeah, and he goes, sure.
Yeah.
The guy Al.
Yeah.
Al. Fucking Al. Poor Al, dude. Poor everyone around Daniel, honestly.
Oh, well, I don't know. A lot of these guys are making a shit ton of money and can probably put up with
Yeah.
his personality.
Yeah, absolutely. But still, like, damn.
Yeah, he's buying up everything from the realtor, I guess, in that area, and like it's I'm trying to remember exactly where it cuts in. It's like shortly after that piece where his friend Gene, or just someone that he knows named Gene. He's not brought up much, I believe, in the rest of the film, but Gene makes that point to HW, like, don't get swindled, boy.
Oh, the lawyer. That's right.
Get half of what your dad is making.
Yeah,
Yeah, he
I
said,
like
"I'll
this
be your
little
lawyer."
exchange right here.
But
Yeah.
before that, I do want to bring up a beautiful piece of cinematography. Like I was saying, there's some really good backlighting. He's on the phone, and he's completely backlit by like the sun, and the like background is like overexposed. You know, like it's almost like completely white behind him, and it's just like he's like outlined in it, like in his face and shadow. And like I was saying last week, like it's always a very bold choice when a director or an actor decides to sort of hide their face. It always it almost always means something. And there's a lot of scenes in this movie later on where we'll be like placed on the back of someone's head, right? And I think there's different uses to it that are employed throughout the movie, and just the hiding of the face in general too. I think it is sort of to signify in this moment like him sort of like working like not like quite in the shadows, but like, you know, like employing his like tactics, right? Like his sort of slimy sort of like businessman practices.
Yeah, and I have a note here. I think it's during that phone call. He says,
Paul Sunday turned out to be a good friend of ours.
Yeah.
and I just wrote, "This is what a friend is to Daniel." Like, you know, I know he's saying it like jokingly, but I do think that is the closest he has to friends, are people that are useful to him.
Yeah, I do also, along the lines with Gene, that's the most civilized interaction he has with any other oil person in the movie.
You mean the lawyer on the train?
Yeah, and they
Yes.
gradually devolve.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I noted that too. Again, yeah, like I said, my memory of him was this monster, and here I'm like, oh man, there is this like person in there, you know, and it just makes the rest of the movie so tragic.
Right.
And what you were talking about, Keith and Connor, with Gene, that is like foreshadowing their eventual estrangement, right? Like the fact that there is this thing between them.
Yeah, make sure you get half.
I think shortly after this is where we cut into the next ladies and gentlemen, as he starts his next sales pitch, basically to the townsfolk, where he's doing his next drill operation, and that's where he kind of doubles down on the family sentiment, where it's no longer just about him and HW and I'm a family man. It's now also him trying to double down on his workers. Like, I want my workers to also bring their families here. And children means education, and education means, you'll get, fed, you'll get
That's when
water,
he promises
you'll get
bread as
Yeah,
well. Something
exactly.
like I said, it's set up and it's used as a tool. Like he is really trying to get them where it hurts. And I think along with manipulation, getting them where it hurts, before this we have HW and Mary interacting with each other, talking about these adult things, like how much money is gonna come in, and like you can see he kind of like is like being a little like coy, and we're setting them up like together as a pair as well, right? And then we see that she's confiding in him. Cut to him around the fire with Daniel, and that's where HW tells tells his dad like that Mary's dad beats her, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I do, yeah, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but I do think the way Daniel reacts to this is also just like extremely interesting to me. And you could take this so many ways because I do think this is showing humanity
Yep.
here in some big ways. And he asks her, she's the smaller one. I think that just shows that he really doesn't like, especially women getting picked on, but like there's something about this power dynamic here that really pisses him off. And I think that's really interesting because he shows so little lack of regard for humanity
Yeah,
in general.
but yeah, there's so like few women really kind of like shown, and I think that's like a bit of like, you know, the period at the time, like women were so suppressed that, you know, it's almost they weren't involved in these deals, they weren't involved in any like, you know, super meaningful things for you know, the general building of these towns or whatever.
Yeah, I think one of the first oil deals we see near the beginning of the movie, we do have the wife
Yes.
talking in that scene, and I did appreciate that.
She seems to be the like sort of like head, like as in like she's like the smarter of the pair, because she's like has the keener look about her when she's talking to Daniel. Also, just going along the lines of when he does his second sort of like town speech, right before that we get some more of this awesome backlighting, overexposed like windows, him just completely backlit as he's being told about Bandy being the only holdout on the lot. And he's told that, like, you know, William Bandy would like him to come and talk to him. This sort of like request for pioneer like politeness, right? To just like, hey, like let's talk about it in person, and he just shrugs it off. And that is kind of a thread that will eventually come to play again.
Yep.
Yep. I just got to say the whole speech really stood out to me. Just the way it was shot with all the cuts of the people setting up the camps. The music again is this really haunting, like, but also kind of pretty, just kind of droning sound over it, like intermixed with the just beautiful shots of the scene, the desert, sunsets, and yeah, this very like, you know, just Daniel Day-Lewis talking, man.
Yeah.
Daniel Plainview, and it's
the
so good.
sky is so beautiful with the oranges, the pinks, and the purples. And then that is where we get this sort of like, I guess you would call it L into a J cut, because it does lead into this montage. And what I love is he's saying the whole thing about his workers is the shot pretty clearly shows just men. Like,
right.
Coming from the tents. Like, these dudes don't really seem to have families.
Yeah.
Like, it is almost like hinting at like that he is kind of like lying a little bit.
Yeah.
Like he's trying to sell them this vision of it that is not true. It's a bunch of these like single men, right, out to try and make a buck.
That's interesting. I kind of see that more as just, you know, the wife's at home with the kids, and, you know, part of the contract is Daniel's not going to take care of their families, so like he has to, like, you know, they have to send money back to their family, kind of thing.
I mean, it's kind of like, because the way he's speaking to them, it kind of tells a different story from what we kind of visually see in a way to his point. But yeah, I mean, like the whole thing is like the constant lies, you know, we all still hear to this day from, you know, the millionaire/billionaire class, which is, you know, we stick together, we work together, we pray together, and we share the wealth together. It's like, no, especially that last part. Yeah.
So fucking true. Yeah, I think either read, honestly, as well, because I do love that as well, that like, he's saying I want them to bring their families, but they can't, because like that's not actually feasible, because it's not a part of it. And it's like, again, that whole sort of thing of being like sold this sort of vision that is really in a way like a lie. And this is where we get the question, will the new roads lead to the church?
Well, that'll be the first place it leads, Eli.
Yeah, he's basically, yeah, whatever, dude. Yeah, cool, guys. Yeah, peace. If you want to talk to me, y'all know where to find me. See y'all later. Peace out.
Oh, there's this little sequence here of
the work site getting set up and them finding a house.
Well, I particularly noted Eli and his church like followers, his congregation or whatever, are putting little like paper crosses on people.
Yes.
And you have
on the workers as they come down from the derrick.
Yeah, and Daniel's watching this from a distance, and he fucking hates this,
Mhm.
dude. And it's so interesting to me why he hates this so much. So much of this movie, I was just like, why are you like this, man? And I think that's one of the most interesting things to talk about in this movie is why is he like this?
I also like that when he does it. So he has the lens thing. I don't know what you call that. Like a like a telescope.
Yeah.
And he leans back so that he's looking through a window to do it. Kind of like he wants to hide that he's spying on them as well. But I think honestly, he hates religion because he is egotistical and he's a self-made man. Like it's like how dare you try to tell me there's someone out there more powerful than me, like when I had to take myself
like I didn't
up.
earn this and God
Yeah.
gave it to me. Like,
Yeah,
how
like,
dare you?
yeah, exactly. Like an appeal to someone higher than me. How fucking dare you? Like he's a megalomaniac.
Yeah,
And-
and I think part of it too, and this will definitely, if it's not part of it now, will become part of it, is that he does see Eli, trying to just exert his power over his domain, and he hates this a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
wow.
also I love that we're getting the start of Eli's flock established. And then did you notice that in this kind of a continuation of the scene is that Eli oh well, I think after this Eli
Yeah.
goes to meet with Daniel and like a dark cloud follows him.
Is this when he asks to bless the well?
Yes. And he's got his jar of pipes on the desk. I don't know if you guys clocked that. I just saw a shit
No,
ton
I
of pipes.
didn't. I didn't
It's also
notice.
interesting
Didn't see
that
the jar, yeah.
he goes from smoking a pipe to eventually he's just smoking cigarettes for the rest of the movie.
Oh,
Around the time
I
he
didn't
meets
notice that.
Henry,
Yeah.
I believe like in his standoff scene with Henry is where he like is the first time he smokes a cigarette, and Henry's also. I'll talk about it again because I'm
Interesting.
gonna get excited because I think it's an interesting choice in the movie that as time is progressing he kind of switches over, but that's really that switch happens technically in 1911 or whatever, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. That's good.
Yeah, it makes me
Little
wonder if
touch.
there's like some kind of like sign within those two different forms of smoking. Like, was it maybe a sign of like how wealthy you were if you had access to like just purchase cigarettes, or just buying loose leaf tobacco and packing that into a pipe? You know, that's generally still to
think
this
it's
day
just,
considered
like-
I
cheaper.
took
I
it
don't
as
know.
modernization.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
this
that
is
makes sense.
industrialization, and like they're kind of on the frontiers of that.
Yeah, in a way like wealth, but I guess just like wealth within just accessibility.
Disposability in a way, I guess, if we're talking about Daniel as like a guy who's exploiting the earth, you know.
Yeah.
So Eli asks him to bless the well, which
This is fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
it's just so funny. He hates this so much, but he agrees to do it. And then
What was the line of what he wanted
I
him to
got-
say?
He said he wanted him to say, "The proud son of these hills who tended his father's flock."
What a fucking dumbass. What a fucking
Daniel's
dumbass.
just like, I am not saying that.
Yeah, this is like obviously it's written for the movie, but this is a character who Daniel could not hate more. Like it's hard to imagine Daniel hating someone more than the self-righteous priest trying to exert his power over him.
Yeah.
But I do think what's really interesting about Eli is that I do think part of the reason Daniel hates Eli so much and hates people in general is that there's pieces of Eli that reminds him of himself, and he hates himself. That's kind of my main thesis for why is Daniel like this.
Yeah.
I think Daniel Plainview fucking hates himself the whole movie and only hates himself more and more.
Well, it's
I
always
think
like
he
an
loves
ironic.
himself.
But misanthropes are always an ironic thing. It's like, I hate people. Like, well, you are that. So.
I think that's like it's such an interesting like does he love himself, does he hate himself, because I think so much of that ego is a mask he puts on, and part of my reasoning for why I think that is that throughout the movie you see any time there's any kind of personal detail that touches on his pride or his emotions or his ego, he immediately shuts down. And that to me is not someone who is very confident. That to me is someone who's very insecure about themselves. Like he very clearly has a ton of insecurities, especially when, later on when HW loses his hearing and stuff. don't you talk to me about my son.
Yeah.
All that stuff, bro. Like he is so fragile in his
So wild.
his
But
fixation on this
narcissists
industry.
tend to be very fragile
Mhm.
in that way, like easily undone in that way. And I think the reason he hates people is because they don't live up to his standard. Like he is, like a self-made man,
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
It's
I think
I can see both ways.
I think as well, they're yeah. I mean, I think both are valid things, to look at. I think most definitely, and I think one of the things that he has is guilt, big guilt, like that we see throughout the film. That I think kind of plays against this idea, my idea of like this sort of like elevated sense of like ego, right? Where he does
Yeah.
actually connect with certain people. I like more specifically like HW, it seems like. And then of course we have the whole sequence with Henry, which
Right.
kind of like
He strikes me like he desperately wants validation, but most people aren't worthy to give him that validation in his eyes. There's only a select few, and that is mainly his family. But I do think there's just this broken, fragile part of him that he despises about himself, and so he'll do anything to not think about that.
Yeah.
And so, going back to the whole him slighting Eli in this scene, he goes out of his way to still say, "A proud daughter of these hills," talking about Mary instead,
Yeah.
who he's using to like
Yeah.
bless the well or do a little prayer with
Yep.
instead. So he's just like going out of his way to use the same terminology just to throw it back in his face and show him who
Yeah.
has the power.
yeah, it's a constant power struggle between those two dudes. I also like what I love about when he asks him to do it is that he's like, "Oh, what time works for you?" He's like 4 o'clock. Okay, yeah, we'll do it at 4. He gives him all that. He's like, "Yeah, we'll do it at 4." Gives him everything he wants, and then he just fucking crushes
takes
it
it away.
in his fucking hand.
Yeah.
I did also love HW stepped in the oil, and HW is the one
Starts
who
it.
pulls the
Yeah.
fucking palanca, dude. The fucking what do you the lever?
The lever.
The palanca.
That's
There
what it's
you
called
go.
in Spanish, man.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, and
This
that,
is when we get the your daddy doesn't hit you anymore scene.
Yeah.
yeah.
And this is the first time we really kind of see Daniel interacting with people when he's kind of drunk. Like, or he's a little bit in his cups. Like, it does feel like he is, like, and then also the way he, like, kind of stops Mary. And she always seems uncomfortable around him, even though, like, she does seem to appreciate him. And we even see later on in a scene in the church, she,
Yeah.
like, hugs him.
That
No.
scene really touched me, actually.
Touched you more than Finding Nemo?
And I'm trying to remember where it comes into play. I know it's like it might be shortly before like HW's accident, or it was right after this. I guess they're pretty close to one another. Excuse me. That was like it was like the point where they show like the men working on the drill and it's pumping up and down slowly. And that's one of my favorite uses of music in there, because it's just this very slight undertone of like, violins just basically kind of like scraping as each plunge into the earth happens. So it's just boom.
Is that right before Joe Gunda
Boom.
dies?
Yeah, I believe it's right before the second death. So yeah, it's just this plunging, like, because yeah, they obviously could have just used the sound of like a drill, plunging, but they
Right.
chose to have it come from the violins.
Yeah, no, the score, man, so excellent.
And
Yeah.
I think then we also have, I think before Joe Gunda dies that we have Fletcher yelling Daniel awake from it, because it is right after
Well, I
the
think
party.
that's why he's waking him up.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
so. He like fucking yells him awake, right?
Yeah.
And
Not the first time, or not the last time. We'll
'Cause
see
yes,
him
that's
pass
why-
out
Yeah,
drunk on
you're
the
right, because
ground.
the violin, it happens during the day, and then Joe dies at night. But,
yeah. And I love how they're like, shut it down till midday. I love how he says
he's
that.
so calculated in
Yeah.
that whole sequence.
And yeah, I was so like kind of confused by what he was like, almost requesting of them. It was like, get him a tent, was one of the requests.
I think just to have a little funeral and to put the
yeah,
body
it was
in.
like
I'm
yeah,
guessing.
like almost like I don't want anyone to almost like know about this in a way because there wasn't like a
Or keep the body covered, like out
Yeah.
of respect potentially.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think just to set up like a little.
It's bad for
Funeral.
morale to have a dead body around your fucking
and it was
campsite.
very like the point of like and he called it a cellar. I don't know if that's like a term that was commonly used or what, but he was like let everyone or like it's something like along the lines like let everyone know if you're going to be down in the cellar, right?
I think he meant the derrick.
Yeah, I think he means down
no,
there.
yeah, down below. But
And
it's
I wasn't
like
sure.
but they would have known he was down there.
Yeah, I was a little confused by that line
Yeah,
too. Actually, I'm not sure what. Like, were they doing it out of hours? I don't think these guys are doing overtime or something.
Well,
I'm
no,
not
I
sure
think
what he
I
meant
think
there.
it was like normal hours of operation, and obviously they all knew he was down there. They just like you see when they slip up and drop it, like they're like oh, like they kind of like know potentially what that's about to cause.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
there is a chance that they actually didn't know he was down there, and they were more
Yeah,
flippant
it's-
with the equipment because of that.
I guess they never asked, or we never got the full tale
Yeah.
on that. I was just a little bit thrown off by that because I was trying to analyze that. I was like, why is
Yeah, I was confused by that too, and then I just like moved on. But
Yeah.
No, we should keep talking about it forever. We'll figure it out.
Well, let's watch the movie
it's
again.
somewhere in there? Put it on.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, put her on right now, dude. Put on a friggin' Lakers game, why don't you?
Oh, there's this great little moment here of Daniel going through the dead man's belongings,
Yeah.
and he finds a cross in there.
Hmm.
And he kind of looks at it like I don't know the exact expression on his face, but to me it was kind of this scene of like it reminded me of Anton Chigurh, like where did your values lead you? You know, like where is your God now kind of moment.
Yeah, for sure. And I like how it's a cool little setup into him having to go talk to Eli. And we get to see
The
he's in like a
sermon.
physical building. Now his flock has grown
Yeah.
considerably.
Mhm.
And
Dude, this scene.
there was I want to say right at the blessing of the well too, we really get the crystallization of the flock there. There's like as the whole crowd departs after he's
Yeah,
been
he has
like
that little crew.
yeah, there's like roughly like 9 people around him, and now we see this full room, right? And we see him in his full like fervor, and there's something so disturbing, creepy, weirdly sexual about the
Mm.
way he approaches it. Like he says, "Oh, I've learned a new way. I can whisper it out."
Yeah.
And he still gets up into a
Oh,
fervor,
gosh,
like
dude.
screaming.
He's so good in this scene.
But
It's
like the
crazy.
best part about Paul Dano as this character is that there's always this control underneath.
Yeah.
This wild expressions, this like big, like swept away by the emotion of God. But there's the manipulative control of like, dare I say, a charlatan, like under
Yeah.
that layer. And he does that so well, where you're like, how much does he like
Believe in
this? How much
Yeah.
is he vying
Yeah.
for power?
Especially on a rewatch.
Well-
Yeah, you're definitely thinking about that.
What he's saying too, and just kind of physically doing as well. It in a weird way. I was watching. I was like, there's kind of like a reminiscence in what he's saying to drilling, because he's like, I felt God's breath move through me, down my gullet and sloshed within my stomach, and then
What an
like he
insane
grabs
thing to
the
say,
woman,
dude.
and is like, I will suck the ghost from you
Yeah.
and release it. It's like this,
he
like
throws the ghost out
Yeah.
the fucking front door,
Yeah.
bro.
Yeah, out of here, ghost. Sorry, I hope I didn't completely blow out the mic there, but his performance there, man, his
So
voice,
good.
what he does, it's just.
Then he goes, "Dance with me."
Oh man,
He dances with her. It's so fucking funny.
dude.
And then when again, another shootout, this framing of them in the doorway. And what I love is that it's like a very slow push in, and we start with the full frame of the doorway of the church surrounding Eli and Daniel, as Daniel is telling Eli about what happened to Joe Gunda. Also love the power play of telling him to take care of like sending Joe Gunda's belongings to his family. But like with the push in, we quickly get the frame of the church disappearing from behind Daniel, and like it continues to remain very close to right behind Eli in this shot until we sort of get this point of when he brings up the renovations is when it like fully disappears behind Eli, and it's sort of like, oh, like now we're seeing this sort of thirst in Eli that he needs money for the renovation, setting up this thread of like why they kind of need each other.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a very cool sort of thing to do like visually with this like very subtle little push in.
Well, I love to just like Daniel watching Eli from the doorway, doing his whole epilogue there. He's just kind of recognizing, I feel
Recognize game.
Yeah, Daniel recognizes to an extent like the corruption and exploitation that he exhibits, and he sees that within what Eli is doing. But like the difference is like he's like, well, at least my corruption is doing something tangible, something good for the world. Whereas he looks at Eli and religion as a whole, and it's like this presented notion of, what tangible thing are you? What is this doing for anyone?
Well, it's like the cross in the previous scene. Where did this get you?
He looks at it, because he says at the end, it's like, that was one hell of a show, Eli.
Yeah.
Like,
I love that line.
It was a hell of a show.
A hell of a show. Hell of a show.
But yeah, it's the little scenes like that where I see his disdain for Eli using his power here, and I'm like, you see that in yourself though, and that's why you hate it so much.
Yep.
That's why it sets him off, right? That like the power stuff really triggers him.
Yeah, I think he's got a fragile but big ego.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
There is a beautiful shot of the sunset. The land is so dark.
Oh.
And the sky is so beautiful.
Yeah, this is an important scene.
Yep.
This is the whole setup of, or no, is this before
HW.
HW gets hit?
Yeah, we get
The
this
day
sort of
before.
beautiful sunset shot. Then we get the new church that's being built, and Daniel like looking at it from afar, and we see Eli lit from the back again. This sort of backlighting his front in shadow, but we can see just enough of him to see he's practicing like a sermon. Like I love that. Again, that sort of use of like lack of light, right? It really sort of, I don't know, just it makes it look so much more real too, which I think like adds to the gravitas of like the story. This also like a fucking epic. Like it feels like such like a turn of the century like oil epic story.
Yeah, it really does feel epic. Yeah, it's such a unique movie, and I was just. Because I remember thinking this movie was a masterpiece when I first saw it, but I haven't seen it in so many years. And yeah, just the deeper you get in there, just the more I feel like it just really pulls at you and wrenches. Because like it starts with this tone, but then I feel like it just keeps kind of, again, like foot on the pedal, pressing down, that not just like the stakes of the story, but like the way it's shot, the way it's edited, the way the music comes in, like it just all works so well to like have this forward momentum.
I think even the evolution of technology as well, like, and these sort of change, like along with all of these mounting things kind of really help, because we do now see the fucking insane fucking like oil tower thing that they've set up.
Yeah.
Fucking so dope. Like seems like such a monument to hubris, right?
Yeah.
You're right. I think this is actually the scene where we hear the undertone violins with each plunge
with the pumping.
With HW leaned over the little side roofing, watching it happen.
Yeah.
Right before they hit the gas.
Yeah.
Poor HW.
Speaking of what you were saying, bro, they hit the freaking gas. The accelerator, dude.
Yeah, they do.
We kicked this whole movie in a high fucking gear, brother.
Yeah, well, this in a lot of ways, this is the inciting incident of Daniel's slide into insanity, right?
Yeah, it is the beginning of their alienation, the beginning of the end of the family business.
It's the beginning of that for Daniel, but I would say it's in a weird way like the beginning of HW in a way, kind of gaining his independence and freedom.
Yeah, that's a good point too. It's kind of HW's hero's journey. His
he's no longer able to absorb Daniel's venom. Like,
it's bad to do that joke when it's a kid.
I thought about it, yeah, but no, that's so true. He's resistant to like the poison that Daniel spews. That's such a good point.
Yeah.
I did have like a whole thought about how like now that he can't hear him, like, and they can't communicate, now like Daniel has lost his way of like manipulating him, which is why you see him sort of manhandle him like for the rest of the movie aggressively in this first part, and then later on when he comes back in a very sort of like covetous like I need you to find meaning in my life,
almost like he's
sort of
trying
way.
to force something out of him in a weird way.
Yeah, that's a good call there too. I forever remember this sequence where he's running away with him and in his arms, and Johnny Greenwood's soundtrack here. This is probably the most like in your face it gets. Like this is not subtle. This is intense, weird, percussive, like strange instrumental.
It's all over the place.
But it fits so well to the tension, and it's just always stuck in my head. Yeah, the chaos of the moment they've struck oil while his son has just gotten this horrible injury. So intense, so good. I love it.
Well, I mean, because we get to the point like, they struck oil. HW's injured. They're freaking out. Gas is, put out the lanterns, put out the fires, put all these things out. He's trying to get it to stop so nothing catches on fire. And he gathers HW is pulled down from the roof, hands him off to Daniel. Daniel brings him over to the little hut and starts trying to console him, are you okay? What's going on? And then as soon as the flame sparks up,
the
it's
oil
that
catches
realization
fire.
is oh, this is more important. Sorry, HW.
Yeah, I feel like also this is it is sort of a continuous thing where it is the shot of the sun starting to set, the new church that's being built, and then it is the whole sort of accident happening because the sun is going down as everything is happening. And I had this note about this beautiful blue in the back of the sky as the sun is setting and as they're becoming more and more in shadow. And then it is at one point they're lit from behind by the sun and lit in front by this huge orange glow, but the orange glow is so weak to the sun. And I thought about how they're sort of, it's this hubris of trying to take the power from the gods, but dude, nothing you find will burn as bright as the sun, right?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Their tininess, even in their endeavor.
Right,
Yeah.
very kind of Lovecraftian horror there.
Again, and I got the Prometheus shit with him staring at the fire like I mentioned earlier.
Right.
And we were saying, he wants to strike the cable down. And that's what fucking tears him away from HW is he is and again, like I said, physically restraining him because now he cannot control him verbally. So he's physically restrained, and you get HW. I can't hear my own voice. It's so anxiety provoking.
Yeah. It was really heartbreaking when he's asking him not to leave too.
Yeah, the kid is so good, dude. He's so good.
And that part is because shortly after that, we get, because we as a viewer who maybe aren't an oil man who knows these things, Daniel points out there's an ocean beneath our feet. It's this. You knew that basically in terms of the grand scheme of things, this is burning up some of your money right now with this, but obviously it's going to be a team effort. Most of your men are going to be taking care of this problem, and they ultimately do with the dynamite,
But what the full thing he says is, he says, why are you looking so miserable? There's a whole ocean of oil under our feet, and I'm the only one who can get it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, what that said to me is just how, at this point, meaningless, or maybe since the get-go meaningless, ultimately HW is in comparison to his wealth.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if he knows that this is essentially scraping at just a few dollars of his total worth he's going to gain from this ocean, then tending to your son definitely should take precedence if you actually were a caring, someone with humanity.
I do think this is one of the most damning moments.
Yeah, it's further evidenced by the fact that he's there all night till the sun comes back up.
Yeah, and it's
in
not
religious ecstasy, staring upon the object of his desire.
Yeah,
it is such an
Prometheus
evocative
is such a good
euphoria is just overwhelming him at this point.
he could have left so there, and then I also just love the way that he's in the exact same position when he calls the dynamite in.
Yeah.
And
just to add to that note, it's not like he's just forgot about HW, because he even says HW okay?
Yeah.
No, he isn't.
Yeah.
And his partner is the only one who seems to
Yeah,
care.
his partner
yeah.
runs off. He's like, oh
Yeah.
no, HW.
Yeah, but I
But
think it's like he doesn't know what to do. Right?
Just
He can't control him, right?
that lustful glare on his eyes.
Yeah, you're right.
staring into the orange glows we were talking about earlier with like the singular stick on fire. He's just staring into this geyser on fire, and
Right.
you see the madness just glaze over him.
Did you say these guys are on fire?
Absolutely.
I think that's a great point, Alfredo, on him just not being able to control the situation, and like it ties into what I was talking about earlier in terms of he can't face his loss of control with HW, and so he like even more fixates on his work, and he gets even more and he will like like again, it's the start of his madness, right? Because how he reacts to HW here is the beginning of his guilt in this whole
Yeah.
situation, and it just keeps growing. His madness keeps growing, his guilt keeps growing.
And he can't cope with it. Like we see it clearly again, like physically restraining him to have like he's trying to soothe him, right?
Yeah, that scene's really sad.
And he's like trying to see if
That's
he can
enough
hear.
now.
Yeah.
He wants to hear his voice. Yeah.
And then cut to him with the fucking doctor, like to check on him, and like so we get this duality, right? Like he does care, he really does care, but like he doesn't have the control to deal with the situation. Like the only way he operates is as like a like calm, collected operator. Like he's not
Yeah.
like this sort of like I don't know how often we really see him do well under pressure.
Mm.
Well, it's
Like,
just so
that's a
much.
good point.
Like his wealth takes precedence. In a way. Like and what obviously, yeah. Like I think you're right. Like he cares about HW. He shows obviously caring for like Mary and a few others later on with another character we're soon to introduce. But the fact is, so much of what drives him is like this ultimate desire for money. What he can gain from that, what he gets from power, being
Yeah.
the best,
And
the
I even think
competition in him.
he would say it's for money. I think it's more just like power and
Yeah.
exertion over the world,
Well, it's what
dominance.
money means. Yeah.
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 and I think we get the beginning of the degrading of the relationship because he chooses greed, right, over the relationship with his son. And when he goes away and he said, we don't have any dialogue in that part, but you see him mouthing, I have to go now. And like we're like put into the mind of like HW in that moment, and this silence and this loneliness are so desert.
Yeah, the isolation. So
Yeah.
desert, bro.
Yep.
So desert up in here.
He's absolutely isolated from the world.
Yep.
Luckily, later on, we see him get a tool to interact again with the world, like through learning like sign language. But
Yeah.
like those early parts of him coping with his deafness are they're hard, man. Like, and
Yeah.
the kid does just a great job
Yeah.
of not overselling it.
Yeah, he's really good in this. I just want to quickly shout out. I think there might be one other, I didn't note it down, piece in here that it's not Johnny Greenwood's. And this is one of them. This is composer Arvo Part.
Oh yes, Arvo Part.
Yeah, and this movie turned me on to Arvo Part because I tried to find this piece that's right here because it's freaking gorgeous. It's this sweeping violins that will end on these dramatic piano notes and then pause and then keep going, and that's kind of his style with some other stuff. I think this is part of the Tabula Rasa series or whatever you would call this collection, and it's so good. Check out Tabula Rasa, everyone. It's amazing.
I mean, and I think we further see this whole sort of how discombobulated he is by his lack of power. And when he's trying to figure out a solution with Fletcher, he's like, who do we know who in San Francisco or and like when he's trying to get him like to like, oh, like, okay, Bob Brody, that's like, well, we'll talk to him in San Francisco and maybe he'll be able to find, help us out some way. But it's just like when he's usually so like he's a silver-tongued businessman now, right? And he is not even able to put into words like the next steps.
Yeah, he just shuts down with his emotional stuff. He just can't handle it.
Yeah. And is it shortly after this where we have Eli
Where
confronting...
Daniel beats the shit out of Eli.
This scene makes me kind of like, because he just kind of feels like a bit like, like this schoolyard bully.
Oh, he is.
He just manhandles the shit out of him.
Yeah,
dude.
he's such an
it
asshole.
makes
but
me
The scene
wonder-
really does make me laugh for some reason.
It makes me wonder because, like, we see like different results for different things in kids. It makes you kind of like wonder, was Daniel the one bullying kids in school, or was when he was younger, was he getting bullied, and now like this is his reprieve to do that later in life?
It's so many of these layers that I'm just so curious about, and just like, why are you like this? Why are you like this?
Him caring for Mary, maybe his father beat him. Who
Yeah,
knows? You know?
exactly.
Yeah, so we're gonna get to this in a little bit, but I'm just gonna bring it up now because we're talking about it. So with Mary, pretty soon when Henry arrives, HW is the first one to find this. There's a picture of a little girl,
Yeah.
and I wasn't sure if this was his deceased brother's daughter, so Daniel's niece, or because it's also mentioned he had a sister. And I wonder, and like every time it comes up about his home, like he's like at one part he says like, if I see it again it would make me sick.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of different ways to take that. Maybe it was just because they're poor and he despises that, or maybe it's because some traumatic stuff happened, and like the way he reacts to Mary getting beaten and the way he reacts later when he finds this picture makes me think that maybe there was some abusive stuff. This is like a leap, right? But like maybe there was some abusive stuff with his sister, and that's why he's like hyper protective of.
I will say I'm not sure if it's supposed to be a boy or a girl. I thought it could have been just his brother as a baby.
Oh, did I? Dang it! Now I'm not
there's
sure. I mean, that totally throws that theory out the window.
But I mean, it's possible. It's still possible. I think there's a lot of things left unsaid in this, and I think it's there for us to kind of put onto it what we glean, right, or what we feel in the moment.
Yeah.
Because when he's going through that book too, other thing I just kind of noticed is like it's kind of like a little hint of kind of like how uneducated HW essentially is, because he opens the book upside down. Like the text is upside down.
Yeah, and this was something I was wondering, because he doesn't ever attempt to communicate with him other than just talking at him. And I'm like, does HW must know how to read, right?
Well, I mean, that's the thing is like there's
Did he ever have time to teach him how to read?
Oh my god,
going
dude.
around, he never. I don't think so.
Wow.
I love when he fucking physically overpowers Eli, and we see him get very upset about his child, like, why can't you like heal my kid?
Yeah.
I love the sort of symbolism of like, you are dirty, you are unclean, a sinner just like us. So he buries him in mud, and he says, I'm gonna bury you underground, Eli.
Oh, it's so good. So
Cross dissolve.
Yeah, next we get the scene of Eli covered in mud sitting at the dinner table, which is hilarious that this is he's so mad and upset and pissed at his father now, which I love. I think
there's a cycle of abuse.
Yes, exactly. I don't love that he's pissed at his father, but I do think, again, it's reflective of how Eli and Daniel are similar in that neither of them can deal with the responsibility of their emotions, and so they have to lash out in order to dominate and feel powerful because that power was taken away from them.
Yeah, they have a desire to have some control over someone else.
Yeah, exactly. Like, Eli has been made to feel small, so now he must exercise his like dominance over someone else. I also like I said, it's a cross dissolve from the scene of Daniel sort of walking away to the face of Abel, like a close-up of Abel. And I kind of like that that's where we start, right? Because it's like this is supposed to be like sort of the figurehead of the family, and then the cut to Eli sitting across from him covered in mud, just like
mud.
deriding him, dude. And then he resorts to physical violence as well. We see this continuation.
Jumps over the table.
God, he is so awful in this scene, man. One of the lines, "Do you think God is going to save you for being stupid?"
Yeah.
He's such
Fucking
an
love it.
asshole, dude. Yeah, I love it too.
That's where like he has like the statement coming. It was like, Paul led Daniel to us.
Yeah.
He knew he could take advantage of a stupid man like you. Essentially, is what he was getting at is like, you're so stupid, and it's like really like he was. That's the difference between the, or well, I guess in a way like it's similar between the two, because like Eli comes to Daniel asking for the remaining $5,000, and he's like, your church didn't heal my son, and he's just kind of upset with him, and he doesn't care to give him his money, the remaining 5,000, and
Yeah.
he's not going to get it. And then we get to the scene after that, and it's like Abel was just doing essentially the best he could with the knowledge that he had.
Well, so this is what's so ridiculous about this and why Eli sucks so much is he was the one who made the fucking deal.
Yeah.
yeah, he really did say the whole thing about like, you fucked us over on this deal. It's like, my guy, you were the
$6 an acre, brother, and he was, and your father said what Eli says. So again, it's not taking responsibility for yourself.
Or bare minimum, because he wanted the 10,000, but he accepted 5,000 up front and 5,000 later.
Right. Yeah, they did negotiate after that.
Yeah.
After this whole conflict, we're introduced to Henry from behind.
He's no one.
This whole concept, right, that I teased earlier, we see people like with their fronts obscured or from the back. And what I think is interesting about this is we see Henry from behind, and I do kind of think like it is the uncertainty of who he is, and he is sort of like no one. Match cut to like the back of Daniel's head, but this is a different use of the shot. This is stepping into a character's like
that's really cool,
like psyche, I think, right? And I think that's kind of fun, like just like what a scene after the other, like using same sort of tool but like in a different way. And I think it's a cool setup again for this sort of shootout scene between Daniel and Henry. And I think it's cool setup because there's the iconic like I have a competition in me scene, where like they're obviously like facing like one another, and there's this very cool use of the camera where you don't really get full like look at their faces throughout it. Like as it starts, like we start to see more of Henry's face from like the distance, and then as Daniel starts to talk to Henry, we see more of Daniel's face, but then they end up like kind of looking square on at each other, and we're only getting half of each of their faces.
And
That's
this intro of Henry of like, I'm your brother from another mother, like he's very like
that's
calm.
also a hilarious line because it's 2007.
Yeah, I know.
Paul Thomas Anderson knows what he's writing.
Yeah, exactly. But he's just so calm and like careful with his words to an extent, and
meek.
But Daniel
Very meek.
Yeah, Daniel's like seeing this, like he's just like, this is a thief in disguise. Like he's not
very
actually my
skeptical
brother.
because he hates people.
Yeah.
And this is one of the parts that really breaks my heart is how quickly he warms up to the idea of it being his brother. But sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
In a way, like as soon as he's like, okay, believable enough, perhaps, I'll roll with this. And even if it wasn't true, he kind of sees this as like, well, even that's not true. I could potentially use him as like a tool, is like what he's maybe thinking in his mind.
I don't know how you would use Henry.
Well, how I think of it is in the same way of HW, right? The family business. HW is now essentially out of commission, if you will. Whereas this new person, he could, roll this into like, the Plainview Brothers oil business, having that brotherly or familial like undertone could be another potential tool to him.
I think there's also this idea of control again, someone to be able to actually like control, since he is like so meek, but which I think is what makes the deception hit him all the harder. Like he was like, I was gonna play him, but he played me because I actually caught feelings. But like I also think there's this element of like, if it's in me, it's in you, right? Like, and I think with HW, we have this first example where it's like, maybe I can like nurture it into you, right? Versus Henry had it natured into him, because perhaps his father was like a ruthless man, but an ambitious man. Doesn't seem like it. Who knows, really? Like, it's interesting why he values his blood, but I do think he does. Like, he values his sort of like, that sort of part of, because he feels like there it is like he's been, he says it's in me in this sort of like genetically implied way, which is I think kind of bolsters that like why he lets his guard down to like accept Henry as his brother. Yeah, he's just like, let me see your ID. Okay, cool. And I mean, like, doesn't ask the questions that he does later, right? That he really should have at this point.
Yeah, and that's why I kind of like I think it's an interesting angle, but I kind of disagree on the angle that he was trying to use him here, because I think that we show such a slip of his calculations in that he isn't really trying to verify super hard, is more that he wants to believe this. And because he's kind of lost HW, again, I think he's trying to cling on to this piece of humanity, because you see where he is in the future when he doesn't have any of this left, what he becomes.
Yeah.
And he's not trying to fall into that. And I think it really does come from a place of wanting to be loved and feel validated. And he
I
just,
totally think the next scene like reinforces what you're saying, Connor, because like his line of questioning goes from like information gathering in like a tactical way to Daniel starts to show interest. Like, you know, while Henry's sitting there eating like the soup or whatever. I also love, again, natural lighting of the sun sort of only hitting the side of Henry's face, still part of it in shadow. Sort of like visually like hinting at this thing. But again, like he is really kind of being taken by this guy in a way. It's like, this could be my friend, my little brother, you know? He's excited by the idea. And I agree with you, Connor, that it does give that little extra heart to like break, you know, like this connection with this dude who is kind of just like a piece of shit.
Well, and we're gonna learn later, you know, into this whole portion with Henry, like how much he, you know, seemingly does want family. Like he wants that blood relation, because he, for whatever reason, he, you know, like you know, to your point earlier about like, oh, that's a good friend, and like someone who basically got me monetary goods. But I think when it's family, he sees something extra there, and in a funny like line of questioning too towards the end, where he basically says to the same thing Henry what he said to Eli earlier, is like, what do you want? He says the exact same thing to Eli earlier on when they're making the deal together in that room.
Right.
So it's like, what do you want, Henry? And he starts answering him, and then he basically almost forces, like rummixes out of Henry to say, I'd like to be here.
He says, I just want to hear you say you'd like to be here."
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that. And this is, again, still very much like this standoff filming. And this is what I was talking about with the cigarettes, where like we see now Daniel is smoking cigarettes, and it's also what Henry does. And I think we almost see Henry smoke a cigarette before we see Daniel smoke a cigarette. So it's almost like this lining up of like they're syncing together in a way. I just had this thought that what is really kind of heartbreaking is this idea of like, oh, I failed with HW, but HW immediately does not buy it. Like he knows that this guy's like essentially a con artist.
So is that your take? Why he sets it on fire? Because I've been wondering this every time I watch this movie, and I feel like it's like, if that is because he is looking through his stuff. So I was wondering, and if he can't write, I guess, or whatever, if this is his way to just be, because he sets clothes on fire. Is it Henry's
sends the
clothes?
fire to his bed.
Yeah, it kind of seems like maybe he was, but it's still such a dramatic way to do this that that's why I'm so torn about it. Was it a cry for attention? Is he mad because there's this new person taking his father's attention away from him, and he has like so little of his attention already? And it's like, I don't know,
I
man.
think there's definitely some of that in it, but I read into it that like he has picked up some of the like. And we see later on that HW seems to be somewhat successful on his own, right? That he wants to like strike out on his own. He has like ambition.
Yeah, at least wants to be his own man.
He seems to have picked up, I think, some of what his father has like sort of shown him when like sizing up potential like business negotiations.
Mm-hmm.
That was a sort of read I had on it. Perhaps it's too generous. I still love the cry for like attention with the fucking lighting the clothes, especially the way that it's like shot is really, really sick, because like his face is completely dark, but it's like he like strikes the match and it like lights up a little bit. But before that, so we have him rummaging, we get this whole sort of like setup of like the brother's diary. We have this scene that I mean, I don't know about you guys, I think of this as being I think the most vulnerable Daniel Plainview is throughout the entire film.
Interesting. What are you talking about here? Is it the conversation with Henry?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yes. I thought you were saying before the scene. I'm like, oh, like
No.
Yes, I most vulnerable. Yeah, probably, and yeah, the most you actually get a peek behind the curtain. And really quick, just because you did bring this up earlier, that we do get the booze and the milk scene before this.
Oh, yeah,
where
yeah,
he
we
makes
do,
him
yeah.
drink a whole
Oh, yeah.
frickin' and it sits there. Good job, kid, because
Curdling.
you had to drink that whole frickin' glass of milk. Hopefully, you only had to do that take once. But yeah, just back to this is how Daniel handles his problems.
Physically overpowering the child and making him take booze.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
And he tucks him into bed, and that's when he goes out, smokes a ciggy with his new buddy Henry. And I think that's the moment where we really have the visual acceptance of Henry.
Yeah, and we get that very important dialogue back and forth with him and Henry.
Oh, it's actually it's a J cut, like we said before,
Yeah.
of them starting to talk as he's snooping through the diary.
Right.
Yeah. There's so many of those in this. I love it.
Great editing, such good editing.
He has those few choice words of I don't like to explain myself.
Yeah.
That
real quick on
Yeah.
that line is where I wrote Daniel hates himself,
Yeah.
because that's when he says I don't like to explain himself. I don't think it comes from a place of impatience. I think it comes from a place of I don't want to have to be vulnerable, because then I have to be reminded of how much self-loathing I have.
Yeah. He questions on from there, are you an angry man, Henry? And then he goes into I have a competition in me.
I don't want others to succeed.
No one else to succeed,
Yeah.
and I hate most people, and I think that's a key word there of most rather than all.
He wants money to get away from everyone.
Yeah. I look at people and see nothing worth liking. And again, I think that's a reflection of himself. He looks at himself and sees nothing worth liking.
And where he puts up the wall is when he says, "What will you do about your son?" And he says, "I don't know." And he says, "I don't know." And then he asks, Henry asks, "Where is HW's mom?" And Daniel is like, "I don't want to talk about these things."
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like to explain myself.
Yeah, I don't like to explain myself.
Yeah.
I see the he hates himself read for sure. For me, it felt reminiscent of, I think that people with big egos, when challenged, they don't respond well to criticism or to perceived criticism in that way.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of similarities in the way people with those two different sides can act, right?
Yeah.
Especially in a person like him who is very ambitious, right? And he at least believes in his skill, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but I guess it's the humanity part he's lacking and what he's trying to grasp onto so much.
Yeah.
And I guess that's where the hate I'm talking about comes from, is that he sees himself as this only trying to use people as tools. That's how he sees himself. So that's how what he projects onto everyone around him, is their people are just trying to get one over on you, and that disgusts him. But that's him.
Yeah, I mean this so
For sure. I mean cognitive dissonance, compartmentalization.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
this so quickly leads, because we get we were discussing the fire right, and a noteworthy moment for me, because I was thinking this is one of HW's first signs of being an uppity portion, an annoyance to him, this isn't good, beyond just being deaf, and that the first sign of that, he doesn't hit, he abandons.
Yeah.
He puts Henry on the train.
Yeah, I mean,
deceives him.
like you said,
Or sorry, not Henry,
compartmentalize, right? He's compartmentalizing his own emotions, his own thoughts, his whole belief structure, but he's also compartmentalizing it in the physical world by sending him off to San Francisco.
I have some things to say about the actual fire, but just before that, in this whole sort of back and forth, like I said about the framing, they're not in the same frame together, but it's implied through the blocking that they are sitting next to each other, which is again kind of on the same side, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's so interesting that Daniel has, as I mentioned before, that Daniel finds refuge in the fact that Henry might be related to him. It's such an interesting thing to hold on to, because he doesn't believe in religion, right? He believes in money, and I guess
it's the only thing
blood.
bigger than him.
Yeah.
In a way, in a weird, kind of way, that he has any, and that's again where I think that's the ultimate unraveling of Daniel, is when we get to this latter portion with Henry.
This final betrayal is what like ends it for him
Yeah.
basically. But there is one more line here, and it might be his most vulnerable line in the whole movie. He says, "Having you here gives me a second breath.
Yes.
I can't keep doing this on my own."
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. Yeah.
Very good shit.
It's powerful, man.
Mhm.
Like that I think that's why this movie, like, I'm getting emotional talking about this stuff right now just because it is this like this horrible person trying to cling on to like this piece of humanity, so but like it just and the fact that it's a betrayal, like it's all so tragic.
Well, yeah, it's so crazy how this person who's so just, monstrous, like you start just almost kind of weeping for them in a weird way at certain points a little bit later on here, especially. But
Yeah,
Daniel Day-Lewis, his desire was to like be true to like the person, and that shines through so much. Like so much nuance in this performance. It was so deserving of its Academy Award win.
Yeah.
Like he is able to convey so much information in these like different grimaces and his vocal pattern. Like there's
Every part of his face is like
Yeah.
telling the
he's
complete
using
story.
every
Mhm.
tool. Like
And
his
the way he holds his shoulders
his
and
little limp. You know,
by the
that
end of the
he has-
movie,
he has, like, a
holding
hunch.
oh my gosh, bro. It's
Yeah.
insane. Like again, maybe the best performance I've ever seen. It's top of
Yeah.
the list.
pretty friggin' amazing. And then like I was saying, that shot of HW with the match as he's starting to light it, and when the fire goes off, we do have Henry like immediately going like jumping up to save Daniel, like waking him up in the night, setting up further trust. And then one of the things that I had here is some really cool blocking and playing with like light in the scene through the doorway, where we see HW, he's outside looking at Daniel, and he's sort of engulfed in the shadows. And it's sort of like we don't know who he is after he does this, because this is a very like crazy sort of thing to do. And it's like Daniel doesn't know who he is, HW doesn't know who he is really, but then he like, and there's this visual alienation from each other, right? But then he runs into the light, and Daniel drags him back into the darkness when he catches him.
Oh wow, that's some good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is also because it's this visual thing of like dragging him into the darkness, right? Then cutting to like this abandonment, like this trickery, this like that's what gets me so much about the train scene, is that he like tricks him. He isn't just like honest with him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really sad.
Well, he like maybe he would be if this was like a different scenario and he had like a genuine way of communicating.
You know what
with
I think
them.
it is?
Maybe.
I don't think he can face these emotions again.
Yep.
So he just, instead of facing the emotions, he tricks him and sends him out. He compartmentalizes
It shatters this elevated image that he has of himself.
Yeah.
Because it like again, it is like he is so fragile, and I really love that as a choice. Like, despite being like a real hard scrabble dude, like he dragged himself all the way to town. Like, dude, do not challenge like him on like his view of himself, right? Like it really is like sticks and stones may break my bones, but words really fuck me up, dog.
Yeah.
And it's so heartbreaking the way Kieran Hines is holding the kid back,
Yeah.
like from the car, and then it goes out of
Yeah, and I think it's all very
frame.
silent too. I think it's just like ambient music here. I can't recall exactly, but it's just
you
like
can hear the kid calling.
okay,
calling
yeah, but
out
it's like
for him.
faint, right?
Very. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
like just him walking so matter of factly to the car.
And he
Yeah.
But
doesn't
again,
look. He doesn't look.
No, there's so
Yeah.
much weight to the not looking as
And
well.
just-
It's,
yeah.
as I love to say, it's like jazz. The looks you don't
And-
look are half the looks that you do look.
And it just
I love
it
this
just
jazz metaphor of ball
immediately,
fade.
immediately fades out right back to business. Like it's him and Henry. They're getting into that the room, like the couple of like oil tycoons. I think
Yes.
from Standard Oil.
Yeah,
or
they want to
something
buy
like
him
that.
out basically.
Yeah, and it's like offering him essentially
Yeah.
hundreds of thousands or millions of
This is
dollars.
the thanks for asking is enough.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
What else would I do with myself?
Yeah.
Yeah, really, like it is interesting because it foreshadows what happens later, which is drink yourself into a stupor, right?
Yeah. I think, so much of this is the unraveling of his realization that his power and wealth is not fulfilling to him, and that's why he's clinging so hard to these relationships. But he is so messed up that he can't do that.
He's already-
he can't maintain a relationship.
He's also already devolved so much that his interaction, and like also we've set up he hates Standard Oil, but like he really like is so defensive and aggressive and so snide with them,
would,
you know?
especially after he says, I don't know, take care of your son.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what.
You don't tell me what to do with
Yeah.
my family.
One night, I'm going to come to your home and I'm going to cut your throat. Jesus, bro.
Jesus, take it
and it's
easy.
funny is like I almost was like when I was
You don't tell
rewatching
me
it the
about my son.
second time, like in these last few days, I almost remembered that like I was like, oh, he says that the second time, right? No, he says that the first
that's-
fucking time.
I had the same reaction. I
It-
was like, oh, it's the next time he sees him. No.
Yeah, and it's also like it's another part of it is that I think he feels like people are trying to manipulate him when they talk about his family because it's what he does to other people. I think it's
Yeah.
this perception
Yeah,
of like, oh, you're
exactly.
trying to like play me. You're not gonna play me. When some people, I think, are actually making an honest appeal, right?
This guy he didn't care about he doesn't care about Daniel or trying to hurt his feelings. Like he's just trying to
But
make a
he's
deal
just,
here.
he's just, you know, saying what you say, like, oh, I can give you reasons, like, you know, you can spend time with your
uh,
kid.
he's trying to make a business pitch here.
Yeah, I mean the whole point of this conversation is to build into place like the need for transportation of the oil. Like
Yeah.
get this ocean where it needs to be.
And it brings Bandy back up again.
Exactly. And the whole like notion is like, you know, we could make you a millionaire overnight here, Daniel. And him just thinking in his head immediately is like, well, you know, why would I want that?
Are you going to
when
lower
I-
shipping costs?
I can be better than you.
But I
is
think
essentially the thought.
before that thought, the subconscious thought is, well, then I'm just alone with my thoughts.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So true.
Yeah.
I also like, we didn't mention that when they first are surveying on the quail hunting mission, like, he tells him about, like, he wants to build a pipeline. That's when he says, I'm going to give them quail hunting prices. So it is really cool to start to see this, like, idea start to formulate. And then again, like I said, Bandy comes back up, right? And I love the line that he says to the guy, Al. He says, don't be thick in front of me, Al. It's he's just so verbally abusive
He
to
is.
everyone.
No, well, so I have my next note is Daniel's getting meaner and meaner as his guilt eats away at him.
Yeah,
and I think
absolutely.
that's the rest of the movie.
Yeah, and in a weird way too, like that ending dialogue about like I'll come to your home in the middle of the night and cut your throat. Because of the weird dynamic between him and HW, it's like hard to like even gauge like how much he actually cares.
So I
or-
think he does because this
Yeah,
next
I think he does
note
too,
I
especially
have-
later on with the follow up meeting with what's his it's also Henry, the man that he then meets in the bar with HW. And they have the drinks.
Oh, yeah.
I'm trying to remember his full name. It's Henry something.
H.M. Tilford is his
Thank
name.
you, Tilford. So yeah, he when he's talking to Tilford there,
And he gets super emotionally active.
yeah, I almost like wonder to an extent if that was just like this is like my big hoorah to like get out of this, appear like the stronger one in this situation, and then you'll never confront me again, kind of thing. I don't want to hear about this anymore in a certain kind of light.
I think it all comes down to his deep insecurity and his guilt. And in terms of whether or not he loves HW, the next scene, or again, the pacing of this movie makes it hard. So like the scenes are like there's sometimes so many scenes in like a minute versus just
You mean
like,
where he's asking about how big his room is?
yeah.
But again,
Yeah.
asking these questions that point at his materialism, right?
Yeah, but that's how it's like his
Right,
love
for
language.
sure. No,
Yeah.
but I totally. But it reveals two things.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
not only
yeah.
does it reveal that he cares, it reveals that he cares in this weird way that is like kind of like
Yeah.
like that shows his
Yeah,
sort of
he's not
like,
asking about his emotional
materialism.
state. Yeah,
Yeah,
does he
how
have
big
enough
the room
room?
is.
Can he stretch his legs? You know.
I did like
Yeah.
the question about the boy, an older boy, and I had the thought, I wonder if he's worried about like HW potentially getting bullied, but
Yeah.
just a little thought, especially with the bully talk, especially later on when Eli says, "Don't bully me, Daniel."
I forgot he says that. It's so funny. Oh gosh, I love this movie.
And
Well-
then Fletcher shows concern to Daniel about the fact that Daniel is taking Henry to like this meeting with Union Oil.
and this triggers Daniel again because he's like, now you're getting in my business, and he just shuts it. He doesn't even answer him. He just walks away.
Yeah, just walks away?
Well, yeah, the partner, he feels a bit betrayed and is like, I felt like, maybe I was the next in line to work with you on these deals rather than this random nobody who just showed up. And it's like, well, he's my brother, so it's different.
I take it as this is now another person who is just trying to manipulate me, right? He wants to be the second in command. He wants more power, and I'm giving power to someone else. Again, just seeing the worst in people, which, like he said, I see the worst in people.
Yeah, and I think my read as well, along with that, is that Fletcher ultimately is actually acting in good faith. Like, I mean, like not like super crucial to the plot, but it's almost like he, in a weird way, he cares for HW. We see that in those scenes with the accident. He seems to care for Daniel, and he's showing concern here. And so it is almost like this genuine connection without the pretense of this lie, even though in Daniel's eye, of course, he's like an employee. So how could it ever really be that truly honest, right? But like what he's looking for with Henry is kind of like right there in front of him.
He doesn't have psychopathic tendencies. he's genuinely like a pretty good person.
Yeah, I mean, I could also see him being like, I've been your right-hand man for all these years, and now your brother shows up and he is your right-hand man.
Yeah,
like I can see
feeling.
that read from Daniel, even if it's not as
for sure.
Yeah.
I also feel like there's a hint of like kind of another person who's like, I can see through this. How can you not see through this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
for
potential as well. The next note I have is just how good the shots are while they're measuring out where the pipeline.
Yeah,
oh
the
my
surveying
God.
montage with all the stakes, ultimately culminating in the stake driven through the table.
I love it so much. It's so good.
Union Oil.
It's so good to go through the
He has
table at the end.
that last little, because this is, he has a short little meeting with the realtor once more. It's like, what's this? I don't own this.
Yeah, the bandy land again.
It's like, and then they, go from there to, have their brotherly, little montage scene.
That's when we get the
Don't be thick with me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't be thick in front of me, Al. And yeah, he does stop by Bandy, and we do see the younger Bandy.
William?
That's the guy who eventually wants to be an actor too, which I think it's funny.
Yeah.
So he's a good-looking man.
Which he did look especially
believe he will
good-looking.
be-
It was William Bandy, I believe. Yeah.
Well, William Bandy is the elder.
I
I
think
don't know
it's-
if
I think
they
they're
both
both
have the
William.
same
I
name.
think
Yeah,
they're both William
I think
Bandy.
you're right. But yeah, I mean, I saw him. I was like, doesn't look that good looking. I guess he's too young to tell yet. But yeah, their
To be
whole
fair, it was
interaction
16
too.
years later, I think. From
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. He is so like kind of cold, but he's like, you're the oil man, right? Like kind of like we see Daniel is like known throughout these sort of lands,
Well, I mean, he just bought out this whole area. He's changing
Yeah.
up their entire way of
Oh, yeah.
life.
They know him.
Yeah, for sure. He's like shaking everything up.
Yeah. The final pick through the table.
I'm so sorry. Just because I love it. He rides past the door.
Yeah, and then he comes back.
And then
That stood
I
out
was
to me too.
wondering about
Yeah.
that scene. Yeah.
And during the whole surveying, we are having this mix of traditional instrumentation with that really percussive shit, which works really well with the driving of the stakes.
Yeah, and I did have a note earlier, but I'll point it out now because I didn't mention it. Is especially when he was carrying HW after he lost his hearing, that like not only is it very percussive, but it sounds like a factory, like industry, like it's a statement on where this is all headed.
Yeah, absolutely.
But anyway, the final pick in the table, I wrote there, showmanship, love it. And then the cut into the water, the underwater shot here is
what I love is the bobbing of the camera, like where the water level is moving.
And one of our themes is sanctity of water.
Absolutely.
And this is the first real time we've been thrown in the water here, and it's so beautiful. This is such a beautiful scene.
I love the juxtaposition of like, kind of how close this desolate land is to the very ocean itself.
Yeah.
It's a very kind of like, wait, just over the ridge here is where I can now set up my forever home and have a home by the beach.
So this is in California, right?
Yeah.
So it's so funny that they filmed in West Texas, since No Country for Old Men was filmed or took place in West Texas. But was it filmed in West Texas? I don't know. Yeah, that'd be really funny if it was filmed in.
Tremors was filmed in California as well.
Yeah, and that was supposed to be in Nevada.
Also,
right?
I forgot to mention our second Paramount Vantage film. In a row, like they're both Paramount Vantage. I just
And
remember
they came out the same year. We're both like, it's such a like weird little like duet they had going between these two movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Like the camera too, like you're saying, the sanctity of sort of water, and it really does represent this moment of like sort of like a turn
Yeah, so
in Daniel.
I actually wrote this as a perversion of the sanctity of water because the truth comes out here and it's darkness. So like the water
Yeah.
does like purify them, but all it shows is like the ugly underbelly
Right,
of what's
it washes
happening.
away what hides the like scars and the lies.
Yeah.
And there's some really cool light work in this part as well. He's talking about Fond du Lac, right, and the house that he wanted, and like you said earlier, he kind of like shows that now he has this disgust towards it. But the way that it starts is Henry's leaning back with his face fully in the sun. And then he kind of like sits up as they're talking about it, and he hides his face.
Yeah.
And then that's when we see the beginning of doubt in Daniel's face, right? And then especially when he says, look it up and take them to the Peachtree dance.
Right. Yeah.
Like you see like his face is starting to turn.
He repeats it
And
as
Yeah.
he realizes this is like
You should know this.
If it's kind of like if I'm within you, like if a piece of me is within you, then it should have come out like
Well,
now. If
you're if you're from Fond du Lac, then you know what I'm like. Then you know what I'm talking
You
about.
know
Yeah.
what the Peachtree dance
Yeah,
is.
and he doesn't seem to react. And then we get this wider shot where Daniel is fully in the sun, and Henry is covered in shadow now.
Mhm.
And then Daniel gets up and walks
that
out
really
of frame,
stood out.
back into the music to stare back at Henry from the purifying, sort of the place that washes away the blindness, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Or that like whatever is occulting like the truth from him, and he stares out at him, and it's like this physical barrier between them now. He's put up literally physical, like there's water here, I'm in the water and you are on the land, and that is like where the separation occurs.
Yeah.
On the beach. Fucking sick scene.
So good. Yeah, I love that scene. And then one of our themes is insanity. Drunk at the tavern. I feel like this is really now once he's realized this realization, now he is losing his mind. And the scene really well shows this because first amazing shot of him in the smoking tavern, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they even use that
Yeah.
on some of the covers or posters for it because it looks amazing. But when Henry comes back up to him and he's like asking for more money or
Yeah.
whatever, the woman in the background is just cackling.
Yeah.
Just not. It's a laughter
Mhm.
through the whole scene, and
It
if
makes
like,
you hate people as well.
yeah, and
Yeah.
if you're talking about just like this feeling of losing your mind, like this realization that Daniel had with the laughter,
It's-
with his drunken brother, who's like, he looks so like I think he's like super sweaty too, and just like looks like super fucked up and drunk, and
It's-
like just trying to get more money out of him, trying to get more money. The thing that he hates most is being used, you know.
Yeah, it's that feeling that I think like a lot of people are maybe more introverted when you go to like an overcrowded bar and it's just overdone, it's too much. Like that's kind of like that feeling of like, there's too many people, like there's
Yeah.
too much, and you just get that same feeling.
And we get like super dissonant music here as well. And I think it like I don't know if they've been using a lot of horns or if he's like if Johnny Greenwood's been using horns a lot throughout the composition, but right here we get strings and horns both being super dissonant in this growing sense of unease.
He's using anything that'll fucking screech, dude. I'll tell you that right now. I also there's another note like Daniel is in the foreground, whereas Henry's like kind of approaching him from the background. So there is again like a furthering of this sort of like division, and again more like facing against each other. It felt it felt a little similar to the scene where they're sitting next to each other a little bit too, and there's this sort of like jagged asymmetry to it, right? Where
yeah.
they are like, we're not on the same side anymore, buddy. And I do kind of love that he like gives him the money, right? Like there's no fight about it. He just gives him the money, lets him have a good time. He's plotting.
But he is pissed about it.
I mean, literally the next scene, he's holding a gun to his face.
Yeah.
What's the name of the farm next to the hill house?
Yeah,
That's
and
the last thing you want to wake up to is
I'll
Daniel
leave, I'll leave
Plainview
Daniel.
with a gun.
I'm no one.
This scene is sad, bro.
yeah, him realizing the jig is up.
Yeah, even though he's like a kind of a piece of shit, like
We get the full story.
There is this humanity there. There's like this is just a dude trying to survive, man. I feel for him here.
Yeah, and we get the story that like maybe Henry himself is real somewhere,
Yeah.
but it's
Well, he
not
died.
this man.
His story is that they worked
Yeah, he got
together, right?
tuberculosis. Yeah, but even still, it's just the idea that like I do have a half brother like somewhere.
Dude, that line he said, "Do I have a brother?"
Yeah.
Like, oh man, that hit me, dude. It's really fucking sad.
I mean, we get like the scene of him looking at the picture of his half brother from the book and just breaking
it probably
down.
is his brother. I'm probably wrong that it was his sister. I'm just gonna throw that out there.
That's okay, dude. Don't worry.
Yeah, maybe either way, he's just kind of like falling apart at that little in that scene,
Longing for what was or what could have been, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. And again, this is like where the penultimate breakdown of his humanity just falls off the ledge.
Yeah, I do like the line from Henry where he says just survive, and it is this idea that he did whatever he could to survive, just like Daniel would do whatever it takes to succeed, right?
Yeah.
Or in a sense survive and thrive or whatever, right?
And I the fact that when he goes to bury Henry in the shallow grave, there's oil just seeping from the ground itself.
Oh, I didn't
around
notice
his
I
body.
thought it was water, but I did note that
Yeah.
it looked inky black like oil.
Yeah,
makes sense,
even
yeah.
if it's water, like somewhere, like
I mean, it's all throughout this area.
It kind
right?
of felt, regardless of it, it kind of like almost felt like you want my wealth, like you want what I've built.
Yeah.
Then fine.
Now
here,
sleep in it.
have
Drown in it, yeah. Yeah,
Oh.
for sure. I got that
Oh.
same read even thinking it was water, just that it's this sort of inky
Yeah.
blackness mirroring the idea of oil. Because it was really, like I said, black is an important color. Like the inky void there is that aspect of the oil that makes it look almost like alien in a lot of the scenes,
Yeah.
which I think really plays into one of the things that I mentioned at the beginning of the month was natural resources or exploitation of resources, the distribution of resources. Because I knew what other movies were coming up, I think it had kind of come up in my head. But yeah, this sort of idea of like a desolate place, like where not even corn grows, but there is this thing that people are willing to like fight over. And I mean, it ultimately, engage in all sorts of shady dealings and business practices to try and extract, steal from like Mother Earth, like so present in this. And I did think it was such an evocative scene of him being like sort of like face down in that inky blackness.
And we kind of get like back to back like themes of like where Daniel's realizing there's certain things that money can't buy. Like he cannot buy a brother. He cannot buy out Mr. Bandy. Mr. Bandy wants one thing explicitly.
I love this
He
little sequence.
when he wakes up the next morning with now Mr. Bandy in his face with a gun not pointed at his head but right next to him, like in hand. He knows the drill. And he's like, well, yes, yes, you're Mr. Bandy. He's like trying to put on his act as a salesman.
Yeah, I love
First
this.
thing in the morning, drunk
Right.
off his ass.
And he tries to
essentially.
use his son as an excuse. Like,
Yes.
my
Yeah.
son was sick, and the guy was like, this is before
He's too
your son
smart.
was sick. But I do love also, like, we see him the night before crying. Like, mourning
Yeah.
the loss of this
Yeah.
connection as he falls asleep,
Yeah.
like, drunk.
Yeah, I
right?
guess this
Well,
is the most vulnerable we see. him.
Yeah, it's not only just like mourning the loss of the idea of having like family, a brother. It's also like in a way him mourning the loss of like that last shred of humanity within him, in a way.
Yeah, I think he's just like Alfredo said, just mourning what could have been.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
exactly.
is in a way, like, sort of like the leash is gone.
Mhm.
Time to just, like,
Become insane.
yeah, time to just, like, go fucking crazy. It is awesome, too, that, like, sort of like, oh, what do you want from me? And it's like, oh, the thing that, like, Daniel wants to do least. He's a third Revelation church member.
Yeah.
It's so fucking good. Like,
Yeah, I
you come
love
down, get baptized at the Church of Third Revelation, admit that you're a sinner. And he's like, what are you talking? I'm not a sinner. And then the way pulls out the pistol and just hands it to him.
Now he knows.
Yep.
But before he even knows, I love this so much because I mentioned earlier how much he was fighting over that $500. Here, he's like, I just want you to go to the church. And he says, and he offers him $3,000. And then he's like, no. And he's like, 5,000 then. Like anything but that.
Since I've been talking about transitions a lot, I do want to point out too that the music, the violins crescendo as we fade to black, him passing out. And I thought that was a very important choice in a film where we see a lot of these cross dissolves, a lot of these like J cut, L cuts. And then like the next scene is like these beautiful, well, he's startled awake. Like, and it's almost like, I think the first sound we hear is like his boot scraping. And it's not really a voice or anything. And then the way the sun is shining down through the trees.
He has to put his hand up to cover his eyes from the sun.
And the way that William Bandy is sitting in a way.
He looks so weak and vulnerable here.
Yeah.
Where the sun is like kind of flooding behind him, where he looks like this sort of like wise man providing some sort of salvation to him, right?
Yeah, it's another, like, thematically, this is like another, like, another pit, another rock bottom.
He hands him some water as well. Like he is really sort of like this like spiritual like rest stop, or like this sort of like moment of like respite. This
is
like
this perhaps
salvation.
meeting with the goddess?
Kind of, I think, yeah. In like a weird twisted way, he's like extending a hand out to him, like, "Hey man, I'll give you what you want.
I know you murdered someone,
Yeah.
but I believe in your humanity." It's basically what he's telling him here.
Yeah,
he believes in the power of this church more than anything. That like, oh, we can certainly turn Daniel into a good Samaritan by bringing him to the church of the third revelation. Like,
I did also have the read of the pioneer sort of politeness, where it's like, out here, like, you never know who you're gonna run into. Maybe you had to like defend yourself, but still, like, if you've taken a life, even if it was in self-defense, like, that is a sin, and you need to like go and examine that, right? Like, it's almost like you have a sense of like the time and how, morality was maybe a little bit different in that way.
And I like Bandy here as a contrast. I'm not a religious man myself, but I like Bandy as a contrast to Eli, who is very devout and actually believes in this and is trying to help Daniel here, versus Eli, who I believe is more of a charlatan.
He has a con man. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, we cut over almost immediately into the church, and we get "You will never be saved if you reject the blood."
Yeah.
And
there will be friggin' blood.
Yeah.
Also, William Bandy, though,
Give me the blood.
As soon as he says that he's a member of the Church of the Third Revelation, he looks like, to me, like a puppet. Like a little bit, like he does like have the look of like someone who is like in a cult. Like I do like
that might just be your take on religious
No, I
people.
do think, I don't know. I think there's this like warmness to him, but there's like this creepy way where he's like kind of like smiling at, like, he did like
Bit
there's no like
cultish.
weight or like solemnness to like you need to. He's like, I want you to come to my church. Like,
yeah, he is very like monotone in his like.
There's a
quest for
little bit of
redemption.
Yeah.
like a uncanny valley situation
Yeah, I
for
hear
me
you.
there. But I mean, I do see him as like, the way that when Daniel goes through this, he kind of like does kind of want to be like a supportive figure. Like I do see that in that sort of like baptism sort of scene. That's fucking, dude.
Yeah, I mean,
That talk about just get these two guys in a fucking room and let them act their asses
also-
This is
off,
one of the
dude.
best scenes ever in a movie.
oh yeah,
The church
It's
scene, are
second
you
best
kidding
to
me?
the last scene.
Yeah, in this movie, yeah, but those two scenes,
So good.
like in cinema history,
Yeah.
man. Oh my god.
But yeah, the idea of like, yeah, the cultish theme, like, yeah, it's pretty paramount when you have someone who you've just essentially confirmed a murder took place the night before, and the route to correcting this problem is not to contact the authorities or anything like that. It's to come to my church and admit that you're a sinner, and then all will be healed, and everything is like, it's
Eli
pretty.
will take care of you, baby.
Yeah.
Don't you worry.
It's pretty
Eli's
good,
got
pretty
you, dude.
culty, yeah.
I love that.
Eli's
This is
got
his
you, Daddy.
punishment, man. It's so funny.
Yeah. And then he has to have him repeat. He has to ask a second time, "Are there any sinners here?" He's
Yep.
like, and then he like, of course, the second time he like really gruffly like,
He knows what's about, like, it's this idea of him having to essentially admit him being like smaller than essentially like the monolith that he ascribes himself to be. essentially having to now pronounce himself as like this small peasant in God's world, if you will. And he hates that. He hates the idea of having to get on stage to do
makes him get on his
that.
knees, dude.
Yeah.
Hates it. Yeah.
It's so fucked up.
It's belittling. And I have the
there's the genuine emotion though of like when he's telling him to repeat, I've abandoned my boy.
Oh yeah. Well,
Mhm.
so what I was gonna say, the spiritual desolation awakening theme I have, and that's kind of been the name of the game for these last two movies, but like especially in this movie. And this scene, I love it so much because it's both. It is desolation in that I do believe Eli is just basically getting off on his power over Daniel here. This is spiritual desolation for both of these men. However, like you just said, the fact that Daniel does start to kind of feel the emotion, there is something in this kind of healing process here where he has to admit to himself. For the whole movie I've been saying he won't confront his own emotions. Now he's forced to confront his emotions. So there is a bit of spiritual awakening here, even if it is fleeting. And like, you know, well, it's like it's what brings him to bring his son back, right?
Absolutely. And it's also like underscored by like the fact like it's really emphasized by the fact that when we start to see this genuine love of the crowd towards Daniel, Eli goes, that's enough now, right? Like, and he like quickly like sort of like shushes them. But as he sits back down, we see him like really like fully emotional. You know, I think like he wipes away water, what could be water or tears, right, from his eyes.
Probably
as, like,
oil.
As Mary comes up from behind him,
dude,
and like hugs him from
shot-
behind.
That really, like I said earlier, that really touched me because I felt like when he's walking away from the pulpit and all these people are coming up to him, I still felt his defensiveness. I still felt him like not wanting to.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
he's like, no, this is not my community. Fuck you. But then when he sits there and she hugs him from behind, bro, he lets her, and you can tell he needed this. And like
Yeah.
again, it's just like the humanity they show in his character, even though he's such a monster, man. I think is
And-
one of the big things that makes this movie just so powerful for me.
The scene is kind of like, because we had earlier, right, the tussling or like exchanges of like power and dominance between Eli and Daniel. And this is kind of like it's now pushed back over onto Eli's side. Eli's in command. He's in
He
control.
smacks the shit out of him.
Yeah, absolutely. And
But
and
the
not-
way Daniel
not-
reacts is so great.
not-
There he is. He's like, "Do you see God or
Yes,
whatever?"
yes, kinda, yeah. No, I mean, you know, he comes after Daniel with expletives about him that weren't even true. Like this is like coming back to your point earlier. It was like, yeah, there's no like love interest or anything like that in this movie. Yet he accuses Daniel of lusting after women, something that
Oh yeah,
he
yeah.
doesn't do.
That's a great point. Yeah,
Yeah.
I because there was so much happening in the scene, I brushed over that.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
he wants to make him admit to things beyond just like, you know, he makes him admit obviously to like abandoning his child, but he wants him to admit to even more. He wants to make Daniel look like
as
corrupt
bad
as
he
possible
can,
to
yeah.
these people.
Oh, Eli
Yeah.
sucks, dude.
I also I forgot to mention this, but after Bandy wakes him up and he agrees to go to the church, we get the mirroring of the oil one eye scene. He gets dressed, puts on his hat, and his eye is only a singular eye is framed.
Oh, I love
And the
that.
way that I kind of took it is that like we have this sort of framing of like it's the moment when his friend died, right? The last time we saw him
Yeah.
have what resembled a friend. And this is like right after he's dealt with Henry dying. But now on top of that, this has led into him like having to hurt his best friend in the world, that's himself, by having to grovel at the feet of
Yes.
like fucking Eli.
Yeah.
Eli
And his response to, you know, shouting out, you know, I've abandoned my child.
it's so
I've
good.
abandoned my boy. Like this feels like it's a mixture of genuine mixture of like regret and then anger with Eli.
Right. Yeah, and,
Yeah.
and the way this is mirrored later is so good. But yes,
Yeah.
it starts disingenuous, but slowly becomes very real.
Yeah,
which-
well done. And then again, you know me talking about my wide shots on these desert movies. What I noticed about the reunion shot, like of that very wide shot,
so far away.
we
yeah.
get so much greenery now in the
yeah,
scene.
that's a good point.
And as I was saying, green was kind of like this tertiary,
Yeah.
quaternary color that I saw playing in, and it's kind of like the prosperity that Daniel is bringing to the land, right? Like you said, they're going to be able to like grow bread because of the irrigation and all that.
Wow. Real quick note at the end of the abandon my child scene. As soon as it's over, and you don't see a choir, so it's kind of like I can't tell if it's implied that this is happening in the church or if this is the soundtrack. But a song plays and the lyrics is "There's power in the blood."
Mhm.
It's like, oh damn, bro.
Oh, I definitely took that as them
Yeah.
singing.
But-
yeah, me too. But
but-
like I just couldn't tell because
It sounded even to me in the sound design. I don't know. In my headphones, I was like, yeah, this is oh man, there's a word for this. It's a word that starts with a D that refers to sound like diaphanous or something like that. It's sound that is occurring in the scene, like
I think
versus
yeah, I know what you're
sound
talking
that's
about.
put
Well,
on afterwards.
I like that line because I was like ascribing it to kind of like essentially Daniel's mindset right now. Power in the blood, power in the oil. Because this scene is the last key to his grand puzzle, if you will. Once he gets the okay to build this pipeline and actually puts it in the
Yeah.
ground, that's
He's
that's
unstoppable.
it. Like that's like this is money straight to his pocket.
Yeah.
And it's the idea of like getting once that ocean of oil is brought to the Californian shores, that's just going to branch off into every other limb of the world, essentially. Like he can just now get that anywhere and everywhere on shipping vessels, on trains, wherever it happens to need to be. He can do all of it now.
His empire is set.
Yeah.
And it is kind of cool that it's kind of cute. He gets to show HW, like, look, this is like the fucking thing we were talking about, bro. Like, here it is.
Yeah.
We're doing it, man.
Yeah, and his son coming back, the whole, yeah, again, you're like, at least for me, my heart's torn here, where it's like, he's such a bad guy, but like when he's holding him, just, that does me good. That does me good. I'm like, yeah, I bet it does, man. Like, I just feel bad for, I pity, like he was
Yeah.
pitying himself the night before, or not the night before at this point, but the way he was pitying himself when he was crying after he murdered Henry. Like, yeah, I do feel that pity for what could have been if
Yeah.
this man was not such a twisted asshole. Like, maybe if he just had better parents, whatever led
Yeah.
him down this road,
And-
like.
Yeah, and HW isn't really having like he's got his hands to his side while he's trying to hug him.
Yeah, he's
no
pissed.
hugging back, smacking him across the
Yeah, he
face as soon as he
smacks him.
lets go.
Well,
It's just,
right after he
yeah.
says, "I love you, son," and this is interesting
Yeah.
because he says it to him from behind him, which again, this will be highlighted even more. But it just shows how still, even though he does love him, it's still such a like arrogant. What's the word for it?
Gesture?
No, not arrogant. Just a selfish. Like he's
Yeah.
still when he says "I love you," his head is behind HW, so he can't hear him saying that. And like in a scene coming up in a little bit,
Right.
he says,
He can't hear him and he can't see his lips to know what he's saying.
yeah, and he says I need you. And it's never about what does HW need. It's always you, like, I need you. You need to be here for me, not
Yeah.
what you need.
And we do have the escalation of with the like smacking him, like the resentment is clear. Like so we see that the relationship is deteriorating further and further, right? Even as he is telling him that he loves him and that he needs him, right?
Yeah.
And I like if I may, the next scene is in the restaurant
Yeah.
where he says
Mhm.
a good, strong, expensive meal
Yes,
is what you
yeah.
need. Again, how big is the
Materialism,
room? You
yeah.
need an expensive meal. Like shows what
He
what
orders
Daniel
like
values.
5 drinks too, like 2 milkshakes and
Yeah.
a couple other things.
No, he orders a whiskey,
Water
a
and
goat
whiskey
milk,
and
and
goat
a
milk.
water and 2 steaks.
I thought there's 2. He says 2 shakes.
2 steaks.
Oh,
Yeah.
that makes more sense. I was like, why do you need 5 drinks, bro? That makes more sense.
Yeah, and then this is a really good tie-in after that. When he orders the drinks are poured fairly quickly, and then shortly or before they're handed to his table, Tilford and his crew walk through the door. And
The standard
he's-
oil fucks.
Yeah, he's kind of taken back for a moment. He's like, oh God, like I have to deal with this in a way. Like
Right.
he's kind of despising the fact that he's gonna maybe have to do this in front of HW. He puts.
But he does. But that's the thing. He doesn't have to do this.
No,
And so I would
exactly.
actually put this is maybe the biggest highlight of Daniel's flaw because he's so happy to have his son back. But as soon as his rage comes seen through the door, he completely forgets about about
Yeah,
HW.
right.
His rage overtakes his joy, and that's his whole flaw
Well-
is that he can't let himself have these relationships or have this love or like be reciprocal. He can only fixate on this burning anger that he has.
Well, I mean, like with the pipeline in the midst of like being like fully built, or like in the works essentially right now, he is like in his mind, he's like ahead of these guys now. Like I'm better than the Standard
Yeah.
Oil crew that's
Yeah.
walking through the door right now,
Yeah.
and he sees this fact that they get seated and kind of like taken care of before having his drinks
Yeah,
handed
he
to
can't
his table.
stand it.
He
Yeah.
Oh,
can't
I didn't notice
stand-
that. That's
Yeah,
great.
he can't stand that notion of like they get special treatment and I should be the one
He
who
even
gets
says
the
it.
most.
He has to go grab his drinks himself, and he says, "We ordered these before them."
Oh, I
Yes,
didn't notice this. I was
yeah.
probably furiously taking notes.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, dude. I think it's so essential to seeing that sort of sense of like whenever his ego is like slighted, he like
Yeah.
becomes
Hates it,
like so
yeah.
destructive. And I thought it was such an interesting choice. Again, he covers his face
Yes.
to say
Yeah.
this.
I mean,
right?
if we're talking about desert themes insanity, this
Well,
guy
the-
is
the
freaking
face-
insane. I mean,
Again, that's
it's so that HW can't read his lips, I think, but
Well,
like,
to an
oh, that
extent-
makes sense. That makes
Right,
sense. Yeah.
maybe.
but I think it's still just such an insane thing to do.
It just that's where I was like, cause yeah, I wasn't sure about the lip reading thing. I wasn't sure like how good HW was at that. Maybe he could have figured it out pretty well by then. But I was thinking of it. That's where I was getting the notion of like he didn't almost want to do this in front of HW to a certain extent. But his like
Yeah.
annoyance at these men getting special treatment. It's like something sparked within his. Like his ego as soon as that happened with the
Yeah.
drinks, and he's like, "Ugh." And
Yeah.
now he's going to throw the tablecloth over, say something about it, go up and
This is the most unhinged we've seen.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is a further devolution, right?
Don't tell me how to raise my family.
This is his third interaction, like, well, his whatever interaction it is with like potential competitor. I think his third, right? Because we have the one with Gene, then we have H.M. Tilford, and then we have H.M. Tilford again. And this is really like a fucking like raising it all to like fucking 12, dude.
I mean, he's not. Well, as far as we know, he's not like really drunk in this scene.
I think
no, he is. He's definitely drunk.
Okay, I wasn't sure because
I think he's pretty
either
much
way-
always drunk the rest of the movie.
Fair. But yeah, like I mean,
He
yeah,
also drinks his fucking
this-
whiskey, which is such a fucking sick move.
This
My
is
friend Christian, I'm so sorry. My friend Christian does this to people when they piss him off. He will chug an entire beer in front of like somebody else's entire beer in front
It's
of
a
them.
really like Pulp Fiction move.
It's like,
drinking all your soda.
dude, it's a
but-
fucking Daniel
Yeah,
Plainview move.
you-
That's what it is.
You see how much of like an angry drunkard he is, like in that scene, like towards the like when he explains everything going on with his business and how much better it's going to be than theirs, and you look like a fool now, don't you,
Yeah.
Tilford?
And he
And
looks
it's-
like the drunk fool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you look the fool.
Again, what he hates in other people
Yeah.
is in himself.
He has to like shove the deal in their face and tell them how they fucked up just to recover from like his ego being bruised even that little bit.
Yeah.
I also wanted to note, like, Daniel is physical with HW from the point where the accident happens. Like I said before, now that he can't communicate with him, like at first he's kind of like aggressively physical with him, but when he like first, I mean, even when he's comforting him, and then when he like first sees him, the way he's like grabbing at him, and he also like there is this really cute thing where he like grabs his ear. That is going to be mirrored later on where we get like grown up HW like pulling at his own ear later on.
Oh, interesting.
Mm.
Didn't notice that. That's cool.
Because I think that's the last scene where we see HW at this age with his
no.
father.
Oh yeah, with his father, because
Yeah.
the last scene before we cut ahead 16 years is just the short little excerpt of HW basically being introduced to his sign language teacher that's
Yeah.
going to be there with him like kind of like full time while also still being there with his
Right, it's implied that he's been with him at the school and he's brought him out, and like it's sort of like he's learning, and Mary is taking an interest in him
Mhm.
and in like sign language
yeah,
as
this
well,
was
and
another
learning.
scene that made me really emotional, and that's partly because I know that Daniel never learns sign language.
Yeah, it
'Cause
doesn't
what
bother.
a fucking
Yeah.
asshole.
Seriously.
Yeah.
But the fact that Mary is next to him, learning it and knowing that they're gonna get married, it's just so sweet, man.
Very
Like,
cute.
that she's wants to be able to communicate with him, and she's just a
Right.
kid, bro. Like that's so sweet.
At the end of the whole like discussion scene, we do like going into like this sort of like like montage is like we focus on HW at the end of the scene because all the like noise goes away, like the music slowly fades and it's just like silent, and we're kind of like I think stepping into HW as sort of like a point of view from now, like, and I
That's a
think
good point. Yeah.
like
Mhm.
like a more comfortable place for the audience to sit watching the rest of the next sort of like events unfold. But there is the scene where Eli departs,
Yeah.
and the play of light here is one of my favorites in the scene because Daniel's like staring, and we're seeing Daniel look really rough.
Yeah.
Like, how do they make him look drunk and sweaty like that? Like, it's so well done. Like, I'm very curious. Like, you make you look like puffy and bloated and shit. You know?
Yeah.
There's like the movie Once Upon a Time in the West, where like the main villain in that story or in that movie, he has like the scruff, like the just like how Daniel looks. It's so mirrored in terms of like how I don't know, just brutalic almost his face looks after a certain point.
Yeah, we see that Eli is departing, right? Trying to spread his word. And it is kind of like the scene. I think he looks extra rough because it's like Eli appears to be like succeeding, and that eats away at Daniel.
Yeah, I was really trying to figure out what the scene was about because obviously it's also just narratively. Well, now they're splitting up. Things are gonna change, but yeah, the way it hangs on it, the music, and I think that's a good read, and that's kind of like the most I could get from it is Daniel resents that Eli left with the upper hand.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that pisses him off.
I think
Yeah.
there's a secondary thing as well with the train, like because he is like his face is in shadow from the train, and as it passes away, it's just this bright sunshine on his face. And part of me was
Mm.
like, oh, now he's free of that, despite him like being a little pissed off that Eli is ambitious and kind of doing his thing. Like now the town is fully his, and that's why like we don't need to see Daniel for the next
16 years.
Yep.
because like
Allegedly.
he there's no
He's running
obstacles in his way. He
Yep.
has no family to worry about. He has no fucking he has no adversary really to worry about. He's just gonna fucking drill the shit out of that place.
Yep.
And I love, if I can get to the end of the sort of montage between the kids, the last scene is them jumping off the platform, this beautiful downward motion of HW, and then Mary taking this plunge, cut to Mary's upward
Wedding
hand
gown.
gesture
Oh.
with the like sign language. Really beautifully
Yeah.
like executed transition. Again, the editing is complementing the cinematography in like a really lovely way in
Very
this
good.
film.
Totally. And then they get married 16 years later.
Yeah,
you
we
guys
get
have anything before that?
the quick marriage, and that peels over very quickly into like the shot of
Him
Daniel's.
shooting shit in his home.
That's some
Daniel's
real
home.
millionaire shit.
I
Some
love
typical
this.
millionaire shit.
You know,
so ridiculous.
Alfredo, I think you made the point that this was the home was that home belongs to an actual like oil tycoon.
Well, yeah, it's who oil was based on, Edward L. Doheny.
Yeah.
We don't know how to say his name. Doheny.
But yeah, just the vibe of that shot, the look of that home, especially just throughout the inside of the home, it just feels like an oil tycoon's home.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Something
it is,
about it.
which is amazing.
Yeah.
And we see him doing this wild millionaire insane shit, shooting random stuff. And then again, like I said, his signature comes into play here. He signs it. It does look more squiggly, but then like the purposeful matting of it dry that makes it further blurred. It's almost like showing his hand, right? His
penmanship has like reduced, like his own identity is reduced in his
right,
signature.
it's sort of like deteriorating, but not
Yeah.
just that, but like the padding of it shows like how he had this sort of like role in it, right? Like he was an active participant in taking himself down.
Wow. Damn, bro. Yeah, there's so much attention to detail that I absolutely believe all this stuff is very meticulous and thought out and on purpose.
Yep. And this is, I believe this is shortly after that scene too. Is like the final signature on the piece of paper, like
Yeah.
the final check going out the door to someone else rather than a check to him.
Yeah,
Is this
and
when
it's-
HW shows up?
Yeah,
very,
it is.
very
and
shortly after that. Yeah.
I hate that the dog is in the middle of the
I
hallway
was
with
just
all
about
the
to say.
like
Well,
broken shit, dude.
my thought was
Yeah.
like, at least he has a dog.
I
Like, he's not
guess, yeah.
completely alone in the world.
I mean,
Terrible.
it's the butler's dog. You know that, dude.
Yeah.
That
that's a
butler
good
is
point.
hard as fuck, dude.
Yeah.
Because we'll get to the end, but he does
Yeah.
not look surprised.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mr.
But-
Plainview.
So this is the part where
Fine.
Daniel. So like I said, Daniel pulled HW's ear in like the restaurant, and we see HW pulling his opposite ear, like as he like sort of prepares himself to go see his father. I thought that was a fun little like
Yeah.
Yeah.
physical like little Easter egg, you know,
Yeah,
that
that's a really good.
that lined up nicely for me.
Mm.
Yeah, just some good symmetry, showing the connection in a way that is all just visual storytelling. I love that.
Yeah, we start to see like Daniel's hand shaking as well as he's like smoking. We can see this further deterioration, it seems like.
Yeah, his alcoholism is just, reaching a new level. His nerves are shot. He's not, the man he was 16 years ago
He's
at all.
a fucking monster now. He's
Yeah.
nothing but like the way we'll see it in the bowling alley but there's just the way he holds himself. He's walking like
Yeah.
like a monster. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, he's such an asshole to HW.
Dracula
here.
again, dude. Dracula,
yeah,
dude.
Yeah, absolutely. The horror movie thing is
Mm.
just that's so cool because it makes so much sense.
You're right.
Yeah, he tells him like you can't speak, and you can tell he's pissed at him because he doesn't. He says, "Where have you been?" And it's revealed that he went to Mexico to try to acquire some deals. And
Well, he says he's going to Mexico.
well,
Yeah.
he's
But I
been
think
gone.
I
so
think the,
he's
I
been
think the
doing deals or
implication is that
something.
he is trying to like
He's gonna start his
strike out
own-
on his own.
Yeah.
and
His
he
own
knows
oil
that he's gonna
business,
strike
yeah.
out on his own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also like I really like the line, "This makes you my competitor."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Daniel always has to be the best, the most powerful. Like even if it is someone who is like of his like sort of legacy, like his protege, he cannot accept like that someone would be better than him, you know?
Yeah, I take that. I don't really think, there probably is for someone like him still this deep, competitive, just no one else can outshine me. I almost take that more as just him trying to grasp at any reason to keep HW close. He's trying to poke his buttons here, make him feel he's trying to be as antagonistic as possible because he has this whole thing of wanting him to keep him as a partner, as HW says to him, "I'd rather keep you as a father than a partner." And I think that's what really sets him off is like this is his only like we were talking about him grasping onto the little bits of humanity. This is all he has now.
I think it's also like again this whole question of control, and like even though he hates people because they're not as ambitious as him, anyone who tries to be as ambitious as him, he will hate for challenging his
Yeah.
authority. Like
Yeah.
there is this
Well-
he is a man of like of paradoxes, of conflicting ideals, right?
It's the notion again, like back to Henry in a way, and to an extent HW. It's like unless you have a bit of me in you, I don't care about you as other people would. And this is where we get to that portion of the scene of where he says that there's nothing, none of me is within you. Like,
And his
essentially.
retort is so good. He
It's-
says, "I
yeah.
thank God,
Yeah.
there's none of you in me."
and,
Right,
and
which is,
that's how he
again-
wins that.
And then he turns away and doesn't, and like that's so powerful because even though we can hear "you're just a bastard in a basket," like from HW's perspective, he's turned his back on it, and he doesn't need to accept any more of
Yeah.
the abuse that his father is trying to hurl
And I guess
at him.
because we should clarify for everyone listening, like this is the part where he explains that like you're not just a bastard, you're an orphan, you're not my child, and there is nothing within you that is me, and like like you said, that is just the ultimate retort from HW. It's perfect.
And I see this as if HW is the last thread connecting him to his humanity when he tells him that he's an orphan and has none of him.
He's surrendering it.
Yeah, he's cutting that thread. He's just like, well, fuck you then. I don't care. I don't need
But,
humans. I don't need people.
He also thanks God, which is like I think like is very specific. I thank God,
Mhm.
undermining Daniel's authority in more than one way. You know,
and just
Yep.
all the themes in Daniel's
How much he
relationship with
hates God,
religion.
yeah.
But yeah, this like the follow up scene to this is so like
The flashback?
It's heartbreaking.
yeah, I
Yeah.
flashbacks can be so iffy,
Yeah,
but this one is really, really well done.
it's really
Yeah.
touching. Yeah.
So emotional.
and
it's Mary
followed,
too. Like,
Yeah.
it is that like kind of thread throughout.
It's followed like immediately. Like we have these like flashback scenes, and it's followed by the last physical descent of the movie. We start the movie with Daniel, like who's descended into a
He
pit,
goes down the stairs.
and now he's descending downstairs
Yeah.
into the
That's a good
basement
So
take.
true.
of his $1 million home.
That's a
I
really good
also had a
point.
note about the end of the flashback because it is one long sort of like one not long, but like one scene, one continuous scene. I think it's even just like one shot. And at the end of it, HW goes off with Mary and he walks up towards the derrick, which
Yeah.
is like it's a flashback
Yeah.
and it's very
I
emotional,
was
but
gonna bring this up
it
too.
like completely visually shows what the story is, which is ultimately Daniel choosing his work and greed over his family.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And then he wakes up in the bowling alley.
Yeah.
And he's being woken up again. And what I love is like, so we have the music, right? Is slow and plodding.
Yeah.
And as Eli enters the frame, it ends. And the rest
Yeah.
of the movie is silent.
Yeah. This
I did-
detail. Go ahead.
I did. I labeled this section of just final scene: Eli, whiskey, a milkshake, and Daniel's final descent.
yeah, that sums it up well. I love this detail here where Eli gets right in his face. He's shouting at him, and then he kind of softly says, "Brother Daniel, it's Eli." And this is finally where Daniel stirs. Not the shouting does not give a shit, but oh, you woke up this little dark demon inside of him, and he says, "Yes, it is." And this is everything, all of the horrible habits we've seen him throughout the movie displaying here. We know what happens, how he treats people when he's hurting the most. And this is the lowest he's ever
Yeah.
been. And here comes his favorite person to
But-
let it all out on.
And again, we don't see his face. And I think this is on
Yeah,
purpose because
yeah.
he does have kind of like an ace up his sleeve that he's going to reveal.
Yeah.
And I think it's showing that
Mhm.
despite him being at this very low, vulnerable point, he's never done scheming.
Yeah.
And just real quick, like even, like before Eli comes in, like the scene of him just like kind of collapsed on the floor. This is like because like we went over this at the top of the combo is just the fact that isolation is like a key element in desert films.
Yeah.
And we have like the ultimate isolation occurring not in a barren landscape, but again
In a rich
in this
bowling
$1 million
alley.
But it's
bowling
it's
alley
also
home.
barren as in like devoid of
No-
character,
Yeah.
Yeah.
of morality, of what makes us
Life
human,
and
right? He's been
love and
stripped away.
anything.
He's an animal. And the way he
Yeah.
eats the meat, right?
With
Oh,
his
yeah.
hands. Yeah, he's just
And
eating the
he's
steak
pulling
with
the
his
bones
hands.
out. Like it really is like he is fully a beast
Yeah,
now.
that's a good
Mhm.
point too.
And I love when we talk about power in these scenes, the way it all starts with Eli being the one in power. And I have this little thing to like offer you, and like I'm here, like I'm so much more composed than you. We get when Daniel gets up, he takes the swig of whiskey. We see like he's got like delirium tremens, like he's in like late stage alcoholism for sure.
Yeah.
Like the way he like
His physical acting here is insane, is
It
what
is
I wrote down.
so amazing. And I also love the like little thing of like he brings over 3 whiskeys
Mhm.
and he offers him
3.
one and he says no. And okay, I do have this for the 3. This is where I wrote it down. It represents father
I
son.
didn't hear any 3 stuff throughout. I was promised 3s.
Well,
We're
yeah,
talking
we
about
have-
it right the fuck
at
now.
the end of the movie,
Well, I'm gonna talk about it right
Throw
now.
it up.
Well, do you want me to go back and
I
insert
think we
myself?
need
talking
to
about-
watch the whole movie again and just
So,
talk about 3s.
The three at the end, I thought Father, Son, Holy Spirit, easy read. But the 3 are Paul, Eli, and Daniel. Right? It felt like to me like
Oh.
at the end were the 3 whiskey shots that Eli
Yeah.
grabs.
Yeah, and yeah,
Because without
Yeah.
Paul, Eli never meets Daniel. Without
Right.
Daniel, Eli would never live in a community rich enough to elevate him to this sort of like celebrity preacher status,
Yeah.
which he said he's been on the radio.
Well,
Yeah.
And
the
he's trying to
other-
keep this facade too of being very put together. I love that how
Oh,
it starts
gosh.
like that.
Well,
Eli sucks, bro. I
the
love
other
this.
because like
the
yeah,
fucking
I mean,
chain with the huge cross.
I mean, he pours like 2. They're effectively both for Eli because he offers, of course, 1 to Daniel, and the other 2 are in hand, and he's double fisting for a short period of time.
He's doing
And
the classic server bartender thing where you're holding 3
yeah,
shots like
yeah.
this.
He hands off one, and he's got both cupped in 2 of his hands while he's sitting sitting down talking to Daniel, and he gets through that first one real quick.
Yeah, and so
it's to me, it's like, yeah, just like he's kind of nervous about this meeting. Like
Yeah, that's a good point, too.
It's a realization that like this conversation isn't going to likely go. He has thoughts of how this could
I
go
also
smooth
just
or
don't
horribly.
know what's going on with Eli, man, because he's like, when this starts up, he's like, I've done some horrible
He's
things.
in
What
deep
have you done, bro?
corruption.
And
Well,
so-
this is where it exposes like how much of a con man he is,
Yeah,
because
absolutely,
this
yeah.
this is like, you can just, it's such a good job acting by Paul
Yeah.
to just realize like how like ungenuine
I love how
his
casually
cries
you call the
are, and-
actors just by their and the director, just like you said Paul earlier. Like
Yeah.
I love it. If you guys want to meet Paul
Mr.
Thomas Anderson
Dano.
or Paul Dano, you hit up Keith.
Come on,
He's got the connection.
I know these guys. You know what I'm saying?
I do like though, like this whole sort of like, all right, I'm coming to you, like I got this sort of proposal, and still there's this sort of like the power is like slowly like sort of flattening as it will like eventually like just
Mhm.
teeter all the way into Daniel's side.
yeah,
But like he's still so very composed.
yeah,
And then it's the whole sort of like mirroring of the scene in the church where he forces him to say what he wants to say.
yeah,
And what I love is there's this
Yep.
sort of at first he refuses because he's too proud. Then he takes
Yeah.
a little swig of whiskey.
Yeah.
He asks about the terms. He thinks about it. And then he thinks about taking a swig before he says it the first time, but he doesn't. But then Daniel tells him to stand up
yes.
and put the glass down.
just
then
like he
downs
made
it.
he made Daniel Neal. He's making him.
Well,
He
yeah,
makes
stand
him
up.
stand up, and that's when he like downs that one, and I think we really see like this really cool physical escalation of like how uncomfortable he is with
Yeah.
the situation.
Yeah, and
want you to admit that you
just-
are a false prophet and
He's-
that God isn't real.
He's directing him
To
also.
work
I
with
love
you.
that part of it. Like he's literally doing the job of a director in
Yeah.
a way with Paul Dano
it's
in
like
that
you
scene.
mean it.
Yeah, he's like giving him like no, he's giving him notes like on his performance. It's really
But yeah,
kind of great.
it's an exchange of like, because earlier we had the exchange of like tussling and fighting in the mud and then fighting his father. Like it was a different, because like, you know, Paul can't overpower Daniel, or sorry, Eli can't
Clearly
overpower
not.
Daniel physically.
Yeah.
He's stronger than him physically, so he, instead of doing that, he overpowered his father physically, and then
And then he tries to overpower him with his church,
he
right?
gets
By
him to
forcing
grovel.
him. Yeah.
He grovels before the church, before Eli, and now this is like the final exchange where Daniel wins. I will get you to grovel before me, and
Yeah.
I'm you know, after 16 long years, I win.
I love that Eli tries to play it off like they're buddies. My brother in marriage.
Yeah.
But before that, really quick, you made me think of this, so I want to get it out there because I do think it's interesting. The whole bringing whiskey to him or whatever booze he's bringing so perfectly contrasts, because I was saying Eli represents the dark side of religion, but Mr. Bandy, what did he offer Daniel?
Water.
Water. So like that's such a perfect little symmetrical setup there. I love
Yeah, for sure. And I think when we see Eli start to break down after Daniel tells him that those areas have been drilled, and I like that there's this reflection of when he said earlier, he says, I believe it's called seepage, right? Like he says that, and then now he like throws another udge word, right? Like his technical jargon at him to defeat him, where he's like, it's called drainage. I fucking
Yeah.
love that. It's so fucking great. And then he like Eli, we start to see this part of him where it seems like he really resents God for his lot in life. Like he's like, he sends us all these like things that we don't understand, and like
Yeah.
and yeah, his whole breakdown of like what
it's
has
so
he
good.
done, dude?
Yeah, what has he
Yeah,
done?
this
man?
this
I
whole,
love that we
like-
don't know though.
And he gets again. He's a little crazy too, man. Like I do
Oh,
think they're kind of
absolutely.
a reflection of each other because
Oh,
he's like,
totally.
oh, there's a demon. Like, sorry again on the mic, but like he just like
no, totally.
this demon comes out of him while he's talking through what happened to him.
I just, yeah, the like, cause yeah, like we get to the point of like he gives, you know, Eli has the final offer is like, I can get you Mr. Bandy's land, and then you can drill there. And he's like, well, those wells are dry now.
And he
he's
says-
like, no, that can't be true. And he's like,
Drainage.
I drink the lamb from Bandy's tract
Yes.
every day,
yes,
Eli.
that's what I was gonna
That's
say.
such a good line. And like, yeah, we all
He
hear like
says
the
every
milkshake
day I
line,
drink the
but
blood of lamb.
Yeah.
The blood of the lamb from
Blood of
Bandy's
the
Tract.
Lamb, yes.
Drainage!
From Bandy's Tract every day, like, and like that's like the milkshake line is great, obviously, but like I love that line, especially in context of everything else.
Yeah,
Like
all
when
the religious undertones.
we're
and,
looking at
and how
everything
he
and
sees
logically.
it all spiritually.
And-
Yeah.
And then he fucking lies to him about his brother too.
Yes,
He's like, I paid him $10,000 in hand, just like that. He has his own company in Wells, and I'm like, he's lying to him
Yeah.
just to like piss him off. But I do love the like, Paul is the chosen one. That's so
Yeah,
good. That's
he's the
such
smart
good
Well,
shit.
then we get the line that has stuck with me the most over the years, where he tells him that Paul was the chosen one. He tells him, "You're the afterbirth, and
They should have kept you in a jar on the mantelpiece.
his delivery of that line,
Yeah.
dude, so visceral, such horrifying imagery. Oh my god.
And then of course the great part of
straw.
him with the fucking straw where he runs across the room. Also in this part, now we have Eli sitting and like fucking Daniel standing over him, and he like runs over and he's like, if I have my straw, and he like runs over, I drink your milkshake. I drink it up. It's so fucking great.
So I mean, it's
God.
so like the glass jar. I mean, it's the idea that like essentially, I look so lowly on you, Eli. Like your brother is the smart one, and like he makes the points about like nursing, like who was nursing poor Eli when he was young. It's like clearly you were like
Was it Bandy Sow?
Yeah,
One of Bandy
it's
Sows?
like you were
That's
you
so
were the
fucked up, dude.
yeah, you were clearly the neglected one, and no one cared about you. And
Oh,
and
God.
He
you
calls him a runt earlier too when he's
Yeah.
like throwing him in the mud.
you would have been better off essentially having been like aborted, placed in a jar on the mantelpiece for everyone to observe.
Do you is it just
Like-
me who thinks of
So
the song
brutal.
Two-Headed Boy when he
Oh,
says that?
yes, I do.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I was just like, oh, which makes sense because like they were twins.
Yeah, that's a
But
great point. Actually, holy crap.
we get to the point of like like Eli now kind of like groveling even more about like his economic woes of like I need this. We were friends, Daniel, and like
What a fool, man! Do
And
you
like
not
I
know
said-
this man at all?
He what he says about God too is like he has failed to alert me about the like the like specifics
The
of like
economic downturn, yeah, something like that.
It's
yeah.
so good. It's really great.
And again, like this is where we can like as the viewer just easily and Daniel himself staring and looking at it, like you can just see how straight through Eli's lies
Oh, God.
about what
This is
Wow, I
the
just never-
last piece of
Eli,
joy
Eli
he will
is
ever have, basically.
What's the word where you rearrange words and it makes another word?
Oh, well, an anagram is with is with a single word. I don't know.
Well, Eli, if
I
you
think anagram.
respell it, would be lie.
Yeah.
Oh, anagram. Yeah,
For
yeah.
sure.
Yeah, anagram.
That's a good point. Yeah.
But yeah, the whole like lying through his teeth about like I lusted for these things, but I didn't really like enjoy them or whatever is like like Daniel and us, the audience, see right through this. Like he clearly, whatever sins he was partaking in, we don't really get clarity on what that was, but he was clearly enjoying it and he clearly overdid it, and now he's underfunded for whatever it is he wants to keep doing, and he goes to Daniel to make this deal, make it happen. And it's also kind of like paramount because like he was talking about making poor investments, essentially, I think it was, and this is 1927, which is just a couple years before the Great Depression, and 1927
Before the stock market crash.
yeah, the 1927 is kind of seen as like that pivotal year where things started to have initial
I
collapse.
thought 29 was the year of the collapse.
Yeah, that's when it crashed.
29 is the
But
collapse.
you're saying there was
yes.
a downturn because I was wondering about that. Because
Yes.
my idea of the Roaring Twenties is until 1929
What
it was all like
what I
parties.
actually-
but,
there was
but
there were
no.
certain downplays within like various stocks and whatnot.
I
see.
actually I watched a couple of like video essays people did, and I think it is potentially too maybe just like 2 years after what happened with HW, like that we maybe just don't need any sort of like demarcation of time
Oh.
because like it is like sort of like
Oh,
he
that's
is
a
like
really good point.
descended further into
Yeah,
like
I just assumed it was the next day, but that actually makes a lot of sense too. Yeah.
yeah, I mean it could make sense that it's like a couple of years later, and it is right perhaps after like the stock market crash.
Yes, yeah, it could have just been. Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, he's dressed. Is he dressed the same in the
His
scene
shoes
of
have
That's a good
holes
question, I don't
in
know.
them.
Yeah. Hmm.
His shoes have holes in them, and
Daniels does?
yeah,
Oh wow.
I remember noticing. I was like, that's so wild. But then when he finally fucking goes off, you know?
Unleashes. I am the third
Transformation!
I mean, yeah, it's like that. I think that comes right at like we get the milkshake. Like, I drink your milkshake.
Yeah, and he's
Like-
and he's running away from him here, and
Well,
yeah.
he says, Daniel, don't be a bully.
Don't be a bully, Daniel.
Stop bullying me,
He
Daniel.
says, don't bully me, Daniel. And then that's when he starts to get physical with him.
Yeah.
I told you I would eat you up.
Yeah, dude. First he says, "I told you I would eat you.
I told you I would eat
So
you
I
up.
watched.
I mean,
I
yeah,
watched.
the-
I watched it twice. He doesn't. I don't think he
Dracula
says that to
again
him
a bit.
in any of the scenes in the movie.
What?
He, like
I told you I
you
would
would
eat
just
you.
think that would be like something set up and paid
Yeah.
off, but from my
I
memory,
see. No,
he doesn't say.
Yeah.
it.
No,
I-
No, he never tells him that he's going to eat him.
Maybe it's
he
just like
told
a-
him he was going to bury him underground.
yes.
Yeah,
As he buries him underground.
could have just been like, yeah, like essentially his, him losing his mind a bit. Maybe he feels he said that at some point. Or
I think
maybe he did say that to him, like in writing or something, over these 16 years or something. Like maybe he wrote to
And-
him.
and there
said
could
that-
have
Yeah,
been
for
a
sure.
line
But
in
it's
this,
also
too.
it's also like a movie, and like
Yeah.
usually with those things you like set them up, pay them off.
Yeah.
So I think it's actually more a clear like sort of showing of how deteriorated he is mentally. And I think what's on those same sort of terms, like once he like first strikes Eli, there's this moment of hesitation where he like seems to take in the weight of what he's about to do.
Yeah.
And that's like the last vestige of humanity
Yeah.
left in him, and then boom, just he's finished.
Yeah. Goddamn. I love, like you said, the silence throughout this whole sequence, and then just his final line, and then you get the
The violins, the
yes, right on the title drop into credits, the music. Oof, what a film.
Yeah, good fucking shit, dude. I think like really like tackling a lot of like the ideas of like like will to survive and how that like kind of bleeds into like ambition and like greed.
Yeah, I mean, it's really a character study, and very much like No Country for Old Men, it is about looking into the darkness of humanity.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's almost like No Country for Old Men is more looking at like, look how indifferent and cold the universe is, and then this is a more like personal look at this man deteriorate, like
Yeah.
spiritually, morally.
We were talking about like Grounded, right? And like how grounded stories were because No Country for Old Men was sort of our most grounded to date. And despite this being a period piece, this feels even more of like a grounded
I agree.
human story, even
Yeah.
though it is on this epic scale. It is like it reminds me a lot of like Citizen Kane too.
I haven't seen Citizen Kane.
Well, that's
It's
too bad because if
blasphemous.
you had, it might remind you of this.
Yeah, and so even like a character like Anton Chigurh, which I freaking love, one of my favorite villains, he is more of like a force of nature. He doesn't necessarily feel like a real person.
That's what he
in a
wants
lot
to
of ways.
be, at least.
Right,
you know?
yeah. And part of the movie is peeling that back a little bit, but it still does feel like he is like, they call him the ultimate, or like, what is this guy, the ultimate badass?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Daniel kills people like, and that's part of the story. But like, that's who Anton Chigurh is like he is a murderer, you know.
Yeah, and he just feels like, I guess to your point, just in terms of what feels natural, it does almost feel like he's this like super villain compared to
Yeah.
someone like Daniel, who's just like a grounded man who had me feeling emotional for him throughout the movie. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you don't really feel emotion for like Anton Chigurh. You don't feel bad for him.
No,
really, at
I
any
hate
point
that
in
guy.
time. No, I hate that guy. I hate his haircut. His face. Javier Bardem is so handsome, but when he's Anton Chigurh, his face is weird, dude.
Yeah, I agree.
So, I mean, I think we could probably hit the tier rankings as we sort of give our closing sort of thoughts. I'm gonna let our guests go first here. So we've been ranking all of the movies on like a sort of tier ranking, S tier being the best, of course, and
Yeah.
then A, B, C, D, E, F, whatever.
I just assume there's no E.
I don't think they're like grades. I think there should be an E. I like there being
Yeah.
an E.
Oh, wow, you've thrown off my whole system now.
That's okay, dude. You can adjust. All right.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to pick a rank for the film, yeah, I mean, it's somewhere between essentially like an like, because when you do tier lists, you usually, if you're doing like an A tier and you have multiple things in the A tier, you might put something further to the left on
Right,
that A
to
tier,
signify that it's above the
higher.
others.
So
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's either there or at worst, it's like a low S tier. But yeah, it's way
You mean
up
at
there.
best, it's
Or-
a low S tier?
Yeah.
At
Yeah.
worst, a high A tier?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Word for sure.
It's definitely way up there. Like I love this movie. Like like when I first kind of like saw like the trailers for it, even just something like, as simple as that, those were done really well, and then it lined up with expectations. Like when
Yeah.
I first watched it, I didn't finish that film and be like, wow, like I really think they should have done this different. Like it feels really genuinely complete for the story that is being told. It doesn't feel like, oh man, they should have like added this part, or that 16-year gap feels too much. Like, no, all of it feels right. The 3 or I guess 4 segmented years that you get, it's just done perfectly.
Word.
And yeah, the Daniel getting the best actor award, we already covered how on point his acting was, his
Yeah.
physical acting, his emotional acting. All of it was just
Pure
amazing.
commitment, yeah.
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 Can I ask you a quick question? Just okay, and just off the top, just one letter answers here. What would you give Tremors for a tier ranking? Have you seen Tremors?
I actually am not.
Okay,
Yeah.
well then that's a blank. What would you give No Country for Old Men?
That's a bit lower than There Will Be Blood for me. Yeah, I if I had to pick between that one, it's probably gonna be like B plus, A minus.
Okay,
in that
okay.
realm.
Connor, do you want to go? Do you want me to go?
Sure, I can go.
I don't remember how we did it last time. Who went last time? It doesn't matter. You go first.
I think I went last time, but also no, perfect. I'll go first this time, baby.
Nice.
Yeah. So we talked about this a little bit. I think when I first saw No Country for Old Men, we talked about how subversive that ending was, and I know it's weird to compare movies, but they did come out the same year. They were
No,
competing.
it's not weird. That's like literally part of the whole thing, I think. Don't you think?
But it's so many apples and oranges type metaphors here.
Right, for sure.
But when I saw No Country for Old Men, loved it. Was a bit confused by the ending. Still thought it was amazing. Showed it to people and stuff. I thought it was great. Years later, when I watched this, I was like, oh, this is art. This is like high art.
Peak.
And so there was a period of my life where I would have put this above No Country for Old Men. But then we watched No Country for Old Men the other day, and I was like, oh my god, that movie is so good. It was my second S tier ranking I gave, and like I said, I went into this movie being like I still have a bit of that rain cloud over me from No Country for Old Men, and so it was a little bit harder for me to get into it. But and I would say it took me longer to be like, oh no, this is an S tier film. But maybe like an hour in or something, I was just like, man, it's just so good. The editing, the pacing, the acting, the deep themes, the story that's being told here. So yeah, I would give it an S tier.
Yeah.
Nice word for sure. Yeah.
And I might be in the same boat myself, where like, yeah, perhaps because I haven't seen No Country for Old Men in
give
quite
it
a
another
while.
watch.
I think
slaps.
I could definitely raise up to maybe just at I think at least they could end up being like parallel in my scoring.
Yeah,
so.
for sure. I'm gonna go on a little bit of what seems like a tangent, but I just wanted to bring it up. In my watching of sort of video essays, this movie is very important to a filmmaker that I think a lot of people really are very familiar with. He's kind of a guy who really brought like these sort of like smaller budget films to the forefront, and that's Quentin Tarantino. This movie, him and Paul Thomas Anderson got compared to each other a lot when Boogie Nights came out, and apparently that prompted Paul Thomas Anderson to reach out to Quentin Tarantino. They sort of formed a friendship. And there's even a story from Fiona Apple that they would like do a bunch of coke and watch like movies, and Quentin Tarantino's like
I believe this story because I've heard similar stories about other actors. Yeah,
and like she said that it was like hell. Like that's the way you should get people to quit doing like blows, by having them sit in a room with those two guys.
That sounds awesome to me. But
but I imagine them like being like worked up into a frenzy.
That's
but anyway,
exactly what I want.
I don't know if I want that, dude, especially not with QT. But so Quentin Tarantino, he makes
Inglourious Bastards.
no, he does not. He makes Kill Bill, and it's this big sort of thing. And Francis Ford Coppola's wife asks him like, "Well, like, what do you want to do now?" And he was like, "Well, I'm working on this whole script, but it feels kind of like climbing Everest, and I feel like I just climbed Everest, so I don't want to climb Everest." So he makes Death Proof, and it is his worst received movie, I think. And he even says like it has to be his worst reviewed movie, as in like
I have to do better than
I have to do better than that. And There Will Be Blood came out like
same year, maybe
around that same time,
maybe a year or two off.
and he had always sort of like had this idea of him being like the big hotshot director in Hollywood, and I think maybe kind of like a Daniel Plainview moment where he like saw himself overtaken by someone who he thought was like not to his level. All that to say, this movie is huge. I mean, in thinking that it like inspired Tarantino to go and like actually work because he said the like script for Inglourious Bastards was like super long.
Yeah,
Like so long.
it was
But
originally he was even thinking of splitting it into 2 movies.
yeah, and so like to prompt him to like work on that, which I think is like a point where Tarantino kind of like levels things up like from like, you know, Death Proof. I think that's awesome, but based on all this movie's cinematography is my favorite of the bunch. The way that it like supports, there's all these tent poles holding up this whole show, and the fact that it is like wants to be naturalistic but still aware that it is like a piece of drama. I mean, and this performance, Daniel Day-Lewis in this fucking movie, I gotta give it an S tier. I just
Hell yeah,
can't
brother.
not.
Hell yeah.
Can't not.
Yep.
All
Yeah,
that to say,
it's so good.
S tier baby.
Yeah, definitely worthy. Yeah, I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure if it could reach those heights again, and it definitely did.
That's great. Dude, I watched it twice in like
You watched it twice,
in
yeah.
like 24
and
hours.
Keith took 13 pages of notes for the folks at home. This is a dedicated guest we got. Oh my goodness.
We're putting
13
in-
pages of notes. Did a bunch of research as well.
Yeah, I love
So
that.
thank you so very much, Keith. We really appreciate you going on this fucking ride
And
with
real
us.
quick, just because we talked about this a couple of
Nope.
times.
Episode's over. Goodbye.
Edward L. Doheny, I did do a little bit of research into him. A guy who the book was based off of, that this movie is based off of, he also came from Wisconsin, so there are like these little threads that connect them together. But the general sense I got from him is like this is still a very different character, and he was like really into like charity and stuff like that. So I did, just a quick anecdote here. My dad did tell me once a long time ago that he read this interview from an oil tycoon from the early 20th century, and I wonder if it was this guy, but I couldn't find this interview. But the oil tycoon, you know, one of the richest, most powerful men in the world, is asked, would you say you're happy? And he tells them, I can count the happy days I've had on one hand.
And
And if like that doesn't, if that doesn't isn't
Yeah.
reflected by this movie, like
Yeah, for sure.
And-
For sure.
And just while we're doing like last points to touch on, like, you know, the points of 3, right? Because like, yeah, again, we had like the 3 pits or the 3 proven wells.
okay,
You know,
okay,
he holds
thank
up
you.
the 3 fingers. I had 3 proven wells.
Right.
The 3 glasses of whiskey. I believe there's 3 bowling lanes.
Yeah.
There's just so like
I think it's only 2. I'm sorry, buddy.
It might be wrong. Yeah, the Church of the Third Revelation.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of just
The 3 mountains in the intro, like
yes,
I said.
the 3 mountains in the intro. I think just anyone watching this movie, just look at it. It's just an interesting thing that happens. And
Yeah. Well, next time
think-
I'll definitely be looking for these
yeah,
threes.
and I think like the overarching like sentiment behind that is maybe like you know, it could just thematically, you know, be like the 3 sections of telling a story, the beginning, middle, and end. It could be symbolism, because there's a lot of, you know, Christian religion.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
throughout
I think
this,
that's
the
the
Father.
easy thing to go
Yeah,
to.
the
Father,
with
Son,
a movie
and
like
Holy
this.
Spirit.
Ghost.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
it's,
what we're
you
always
know.
saying, brother.
brother.
So yeah, there's, you know, it's just like a fun
FSHS.
thing that I think Paul, my good friend Paul,
Paul
I think,
Atreides.
I think he put into the film just to.
You're really going for it.
I think he
Lisa
just,
Nagaib!
I think he just kind of thematically threw those things in there as like a you know, little little thing to design various think tanks of what that exactly means.
There's a lot of
Yeah.
intentionality in this film.
Yeah, well, what's crazy is No Country for Old Men, we said, was the most thought-provoking movie we'd watched up to this point. And I wouldn't say this is more thought-provoking, but I do think this is probably our longest discussion and the most we've debated something. Like, usually when we're talking about characters, we're like, yeah, that's pretty much what that character
Straightforward.
is or represents. And
Yeah.
here, like, how many times are we like, no, I think it's this.
I
So-
do think it is cool. I think, like, again, I think our reads are very compatible, but I think they do speak to two kind of opposite sides of a coin, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
where we are kind of approaching it from different parts. But all that to say, again, thank you so very much, Keith, for joining us.
Thanks, man.
We
course.
appreciate you. We're gonna have to have you on again sometime very soon, to do some other movie, or maybe, I don't know, who knows, for some other bullshit. Maybe we'll expand into just bullshit.
Yeah, that
Bullshit,
sounds
bullshit,
good.
bullshit.
Bullshit channel.
Speaking of bullshit,
Well, I don't think speaking of bullshit.
speaking of bullshit,
Awesome stuff.
speaking of bullshit, tell them what we're doing next week, Connor.
We are going to be as insane as Daniel Plainview here because we are watching 3 movies next week. That is right.
Whoa.
3 movies for this next episode because we're crazy people. We're watching all 3 of the Dune movies.
All
Good
3 film
Lord.
Dunes. The rule usually for Cinema Forecast is we try to watch the movie within 24-ish hours, 36 hours, basically like the day before. For this, what we're gonna do is we're gonna watch the David Lynch one, R.I.P. to a real fucking artist.
R.I.P.
We're gonna watch the David Lynch one within the week, and then the 2 Dune movies kind of within 48-ish hours of the record for the episode. And for that one, we're also potentially gonna have a guest.
Hell yeah, brother.
Mhm.
I'm very excited.
Yeah.
It's going to be
yeah.
stupidly long, I'm sure. And we are going to talk about Dune for many hours, but it's going to be a great time.
Just
A
like this
lot of
one, which was
content.
honestly so much fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of
Yeah.
fun.
Thank y'all for listening. Thank y'all for tuning in. Again, follow us, Cinema Forecast, FOURCAST, on all sort of social medias and stuff. Yeah. Thank you, Connor. Thank you, Keith. I hope everyone has a good night.
I'm finished.
I'm an oil man, you see. And by that, I mean I drink oil. 3/4 of a liter a day, sometimes more. No one can do what I can do, you see. My stomach is lined like a well-sealed barrel. My throat, coated in the finest lubricants. Others may sip water, may drink their milk in their milkshakes. But I take crude. I take motor. I'll even take synthetic. Now, what does this mean for you? It means stability. It means endurance. It means I can outlast any man in this room. My joints do not creak. My bones do not wear. While you suffer the dryness of age, I remain ever slick. I have a pipeline, you see. Straight from the bottle to gullet. I do not waste. I do not spill. And I am prepared, fully prepared, to drink more than any man has dared.